You're listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast, celebrating hunting dog heritage, competition, and community. United Kennel Club has been the hunting dog sports home for coonhounds, beagles, retrievers, pointers, cur, feist, and more for over 125 years.
Welcome back to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast. This is Trevor Wade. I'm the Coonhound Program Manager at UKC, and I'm joined today by the Director of Hunting Ops, Alan Gingrich, and the Vice President of UKC, Todd Kennel. How's it going today, guys?
Good. Good to be back in the studio with both of you, and looking forward to having this discussion.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. I have been looking forward to it as well. When he first mentioned we're going to do a podcast on the World Championship history, it's got me excited, and Trevor did a great job putting some notes together here that you and I, we've all looked at, and that makes it even more exciting. Just some things we probably wouldn't have thought of, had we not had some notes to follow along a little bit.
My first reaction was, holy information moly. That was a lot of stuff. Good job on that.
Yeah, I did a very good job, digging through old magazines and things like that, kind of digging into the history, and I think it'll just help us make it even more interesting, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah, well, hey, it's a significant event, and it deserves a significant podcast. And we've kind of done this a few times. We did the History of Autumn Oaks podcast, all three of us, and the History of the Winter Classic podcast together. So this is a good chance to shine a light now on probably what most would consider the most prestigious title in coonhounds.
Yeah, and this started in 1978, I guess, and actually started, there was another version of it before that even, but for such a long time like that, and the significance it still has today, the prestige it still holds is really amazing, especially when you think in today's world when there's so many other bigger money hunts or a lot of big events now, and that for it to still hold its prestige as it does, and as it should, it really speaks for the World Championship.
Yeah, and over the years, all the male dogs that won this, it put them on the map as sires. That world title, that was something highly sought from breeders.
Yeah, and some more than others.
Yep.
Those that turned out to be good reproducers. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about way back at the origin of it and where it started. And if you kind of comb back through the history of the event, it all starts way before that 1978 date. And actually, if you look back at some of our old publications and historical stuff we have here in our archives, you'll find that way back, even starting in Autumn Oaks back in the day, they used to consider Autumn Oaks the Autumn Oak World Championship with the singular oak on there. And it kind of was considered that from 1960 all the way up to 1975, whenever a familiar name for a lot of folks out there were UKC historians, Fred Miller, came and purchased the registry and became a big part of it.
Yeah, you mentioned the name Autumn Oak was just singular, and you still hear some of the old guys just calling it the Autumn Oak. Yeah. Charlie Cundiff is one. Even his son Doug, one of our field reps, still calls it the Autumn Oak. And that's probably just from hearing his dad calling it that, but that's probably where that came from.
And it was probably considered the World Championship because you remember what the other big event that was going on Labor Day weekend was? The Kenton Nationals.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
That was a big water race, flea market, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So there was probably some decisions there to say this is a true Coonhound World Championship or something along that line.
And that's the one my grandfather used to talk about sometimes.
Kenton National.
Yeah,
like you could go trade a stepladder for the best beagle in the whole country or something.
Yeah. So whenever Fred Miller got involved, actually in 1975, he created a new event to take place of that and changed the Autumn Oak World Championship to Autumn Oaks. So that's kind of the history of that. It's pretty neat to read about that. But the invention back then by those involved was an event called the Tournament of Champions, and not the one you guys are thinking of now if you're listening to this, but way back in 1975, the Tournament of Champions was kind of the first of its kind, and what he really wanted was a elimination style hunt to crown a world champion instead of a high scoring type event. So first Tournament of Champions was in 1975, and it was similar to today. There were qualifiers. There were 12 qualifying events that first year, and the first qualifying event was held July 12th, 1975, in Ada, Oklahoma. A lot of people may be familiar with that from Battle of the Breeds. That's 1975, still hosting major events to this day, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a name today that's still involved with Battle of the Breeds over in Oklahoma, and that's Gary Starnes. And ironic, it was his dad, Billy Starnes, that was involved with these first tournament of champion qualifying events there in
Oh,
Ada.
Ada's been
Yeah.
the place out there, hasn't it, forever?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in order to even compete to qualify for the tournament champions, your dog had to be a night champion or grand night champion. And in that first year with the 12 qualifying events, there was an average of 9 dogs in attendance. So it wasn't like anything else. When you start out, sometimes you start out on the grand level and work your way up. But the way that the format of that tournament champions was, the top 10 at the qualifier would be qualified regardless of if they won their cast or not. But they did have to have a total score of plus points to advance to the next level. And then qualified dogs would enter into an elimination style tournament, so similar to how the World Finals is today. And they called that the 4-night finals. And that was around for quite a while, actually. In that first year, the finals was in Wadesville, Indiana.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm not even sure
I
where
don't know.
Wadesville is. I should have looked it up, but I'm not sure where that is.
No.
Never heard of it. I live in Indiana. Don't know where it is. It's
Sounds
probably
sounds like a good place to me.
Must be. Probably a little country town or something. Yeah.
But 32 dogs from 14 states made that first trip there. And the overall winner that first year was Grand Night champion Sandy Creek Annie. That was a black and tan female owned by Charles Barnes of Thomasville, North Carolina, and handled by J.T. Gammons. So there's a little bit of history for everyone.
Yeah. Back in those early days, walkers weren't as
I was
prominent like
thinking
they
the
are
same
today.
thing, yeah.
You see a lot of the other breeds back in the early days. Yeah.
Even in this, where it was not a high score event, it was a win and move on. That's kind of cool to see.
Yeah, so that was 1975. Then 1976, the second year, there you see they moved a number of qualifiers, increased a little bit. 15 qualifiers the next year, 332 total entries, and averaged out to 22 per event. So it increased a little bit. So it must have been
Growing.
Yeah, growing right out of the gate. The second year, 4-night finals were held in a place that we're very familiar with today, Flora, Charlie Brown Park.
Yeah.
So so there's that. Flora is mentioned
those
early on already.
areas, just what we talked about Ada, and here we're talking about Flora. Those areas that just had strong coon hunter support. Like a strong club support where they could put on major events. It looks like it's always been that way.
Yeah. And, that year they had 21 dogs from 10 different states and a red bone female. So 2 females back to back in the first 2 years won it. Black and tan female the first year. And now 1976, we're talking about a red bone. Everett Sally was her name, owned by Edgar Everett of Peoria, Illinois. So just north of Salem, or north of Florida, there about an hour or so, I guess. Yeah, so that was the second year. So, it grew a little bit already there.
Yeah, one thing that I think made it grow, the significant thing there, they added registered dogs were able to compete, even didn't have to be night champions or grand nights to compete in the qualifiers then or advance to the 4-night finals. So, and then the third year and the last year of that version of the tournament champions, 654 entries and 19 RQEs in 15 different states. So
that nearly doubled.
Substantial growth here.
Big time.
4-night final was held in Beaver Dam, Ohio, another place that's hosted a lot of major events, even today. But the 26 dogs from 11 states came to the final. The winner was Grand Night champion Hall's Dangerous Ranger, the Treant Walker male, owned and handled by Kenneth Red Hall of McConnellsville, Ohio.
Yeah, I know right where Beaver Dam is. You take Interstate 30 east out of Fort Wayne. We take 30 out there to go to a lot of events in Ohio.
Towards Van Wert.
Towards Van Wert. It's right there on Interstate 75. Beaver Dam has a big truck stop right there, but right there's Beaver Dam. Go through there a bunch every year. So, 1977.
And it was really the next year, 1978, and you guys already mentioned it here beforehand, 1978, the jumping off point for the actual UKC Coonhound World Championship.
Yep.
And that first year, again, they went back to Beaver Dam, Ohio. And you talk about they really vamped up the number of RQEs here. You see they jumped from 19 qualifying events now to 46 RQEs in this first year of the actual World Championship. They had over 2,000 entries at the RQEs that year, 2,078 to be specific. And 423 dogs got qualified. And that's 3 times as many entries as the previous year, which is kind of incredible. In the article that I read, it kind of talked about how a driving force of that may be of how they started awarding points. Putting titles on your dogs then, I mean, in 1978, you're talking about hunts are still relatively new there, if you think about it. And they started, so at the RQEs there, first place dogs to RQE would get 40 points, and a first place win, talking about the registered division. And then second through 10th place would get 30 points. So you didn't have to actually get second or third in the RQEs to get the points. And then night champions place in first through 10th would get a win towards Grand Night. And we know how hard it was to get a first night Grand Night win. So that probably brought people out in droves to try to enter those things. And talking about the prize list of that first one, obviously they had trophies and maybe a dog box and different things like that. But some of the interesting things to me that still happened until maybe just recently or still today, obviously the World Night Champion title was put on the dog's record. This was the first year that happened. And the dog who won that year would be automatically qualified for the rest of their life. So that happened right there in 1978, and that still happens today.
Yep.
And then the winning dog from that year would be put on the next year's scorecards.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. And I think that happened probably that quit happening maybe in the mid 2010s maybe or something like
somewhere
that.
in there. Yeah.
But I thought all that stuff was cool. That was first of its kind type deal, I would say, for a lot of those things. And when you talk about going to the finals, they had 107 pre-entries in the finals out of the 423 qualified dogs. 88 confirmed, and I put the breed breakdown on here because we're talking about 1978. So, what is that? So that's 47 years ago, right? Almost 50 years ago at this point. And the breed breakdown still looks like if we were to have a dog with 88, a hunt with 88 dogs in today, it might look a little something like this: 9 black and tans, 12 blue ticks, 12 English, a plot, 3 red bones, and 51 walkers.
That percentage looks still accurate, doesn't it?
Does. It really does. We could be talking about it.
Yeah.
I thought it held pretty true, and that's
yeah.
pretty interesting. Of those 88, 66 were males and 22 were females. That's probably a little bit more skewed back then than it is these days. And then the breakdown of the titles of dogs: 34 registered, 32 night champions, and 22 grands.
And probably the big difference, there's that many registered dogs in it, probably,
right,
as compared to today. Yeah, but still, they still had those 4-night finals. It started on a Wednesday night, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But yeah, the one thing you have make note of here is some of the field reps that Todd, you mentioned. We talked about field reps a little bit, how they were involved in the very first World Championships and still are today, very much involved. They're a big part of it. They put on these events,
Yeah, they do.
But just some of the old names, and man, that would be interesting. There's names on here that I don't even recognize. There was a couple that I'm not sure I even heard of. I asked you about a Paul Toon. You said you.
See, that was a little bit before my time.
Right.
I don't remember. I remember the name.
Yeah. So at this first
House.
one, we're talking the very first one. The guys that were involved field reps. We're talking about Jim Carpenter.
Oh
He was
yeah,
a
we
Red
both
Bone
knew
guy.
him.
Yeah, Jim Carpenter.
Good guy.
Manfred Craver, he was involved. You see his name in the history books a lot.
See, Manfred Craver. When I see that name, you think of the father of the competition rules.
Yeah, exactly. John East.
Yeah.
John. Was,
he was one of my favorites.
Yeah, John East in Illinois. Was he in Illinois?
Indiana.
Was he in? Yeah, Indiana. You're right, Indiana. Here's a name. Steve Fielder was on that list as a field rep at that very first year. Yeah. Glenn Greathouse. That's one I
recognize the name, but I didn't know him.
And then Paul Jones and then Paul Toon. But yeah.
Yeah, like we said, we probably won't acknowledge every field rep from every one of these events, but we should do an episode of the podcast on all of the.
It would be.
We've had a great staff,
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about that 4-night finals there. Wednesday night had 22 casts. 21 came back with plus point cast winners. I thought that was pretty neat. That trend kind of happened all the way through. On Friday night, the dogs hunted alone. And of the 6 dogs that made it there to that third round on Friday night, 4 of the 6 ended with plus points, and those 4 advanced to the final cast. Judging that first cast that year was Russell Newland, Terry White, Tom Emmerich, and Laverne Newland.
4 judges. Were they all had a judge for every dog, or what?
So it said that one was the guide, but it didn't indicate which one the guide was. So of those 4, 3 judged and 1 guide. So
yeah.
Maybe Laverne was the guide. He was listed last, so
yeah.
But I shouldn't speculate.
Yeah.
But the final cast here, if you want to know the very first final cast of the UKC World Championship, the winner overall, Loomis's Tom. So everybody remembers that name if you're a historian at all or ever look at our list of winners. His is the first name to pop up, and Loomis's Tom was owned by Ed Loomis of Nebraska, and he won that first year with 575 plus. So he was getting after it. Finley River Horse, another tree and walker. So Tom was a tree and walker. Horse was a tree and walker. He had 400 plus. Jones Southern Rambler was a black and tan with 100 plus. And then Toussaint Red Rip. There was a red bone there that actually minused out in this 3-hour hunt this night. But an interesting note about him, he had been the high scoring dog in each of the previous rounds. So
was that Dwayne Bruff's dog?
It was Dwayne Bruff's, who
out.
just passed here a couple of weeks ago as we're recording this. But and Rip was for a long time the only red bone to even be in the Final Four for a long time, a lot of years, and it was that very first World Championship. And that dog is, he's obviously in a lot of red bones pedigree still today, and is a good reproducer. But yeah, Loomis's Tom.
I think Ed Loomis had racehorses too. I heard. I don't know if it's quarter horse type or thoroughbred, but I think he was into racehorses.
Yeah, horse guy. Yeah.
And one last interesting note there before we move on, because I thought this was interesting. That very first, the 1978 World Championship issue of Coonhound Bloodlines had a 6-page spread. So as we go through every 10 years or so, I'll kind of let you know what the spread is. But 6 pages that first year.
Yeah. Loomis's Tom, you have his pedigree noted here, but Shady Lane Smokey, just a PR dog, not a title dog, was the sire of old
probably
Loomis's
common
Tom.
back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, bottom side. His mother was a Grand Knight, Loomis's Sailor Babe. I'd assume that was probably one of Ed's females as well. Yeah. Very first world champion, Loomis's Tom.
Mm-hmm. Next year, another location that we've already talked about, back to Flora, Illinois in 1979. So went back to the well there at Charlie Brown Park, and 107 night hunt entries that year in Flora. Just an interesting thing there, and we kind of mentioned it already, but it talked about the satellite clubs that they used at the World Championship Finals that year: Claremont, Effingham, Newton, Salem. I know a lot of people go to that place, whether they're going to breed days, we're having a zone there, or other registries, major events, and you're going to go to a lot of these satellite clubs, or to these clubs specifically at major events still this day. So the staying power at these clubs, now we're talking about 45 years later, is pretty incredible.
It's impressive.
It is.
The winner that year was actually another tree and walker, and that was Mullins Sugar Creek Rip, and that dog was owned by Leonard Harris of Michigan. Rip won that cast with 500 plus and beat some pretty salty dogs here. We see House's Clint came second in here, tree and walker. Obviously, a lot of people are familiar with the Joe House's dogs there, 425 plus. Not familiar with Grass String Bobo, but he was third there with 300 plus. And Finley River Horse, 2 world championships. He's already made it in the final cast twice, and actually scratched out of this one. But what an incredible accomplishment!
Yeah, 2 years in a row like that in the first 2 years. That had to be huge back then, you would think.
Yeah, no
would
kidding.
still be today for any world championship, but yeah.
And just of a separate note that I made in here as I'm scrolling through the magazines, but it was talking about how UKC made a note. It was a notice that UKC had moved its office to 100 East Kilgore Road.
Wow.
So I thought that's kind of interesting. You never know what you're going to run across in those old publications.
Yeah, and before that, it was downtown somewhere. Right downtown. So, yeah. So that's where we are today.
Yeah,
in the basement of that very building where they moved to. And I guess it was Fred that. Did he buy this, or did he have this built?
The building?
Yeah, the building.
Built.
It was
designed as a records office. That's why it's all concrete.
Yeah.
Like it's fireproof.
Yeah.
Because all the records back then were paper.
Yeah. It's not quite flood proof. Every couple of years we had some water in the basement. But
Did he know this was like a little podcast studio area then?
Yeah. So there you have the first 2 years of the World Championship.
Yeah, so 1980 was year 3. Moved to Liberty, Indiana. It's another great place, and as we're taping this, we're gearing up for Autumn Oaks. I'm not sure exactly when this will drop, probably after Autumn Oaks, but whenever I think Autumn Oaks, got to think Liberty, Indiana, that big warm-up slam they host on Tuesday night. But one thing about it here, we have a major jump in the entries as far as entries into the finals. 184 night hunt entries this year into Liberty, Indiana. So I don't know if that's just popularity catching on then, starting to get a little bit of a foothold or what, but that's a 70 dog increase there.
Yeah, something that I noticed here, obviously the Liberty, the Hannah's Creek Club is what they're called, still very active today, and one of the best clubs in Indiana still today. A couple new names for field reps that came on. Dennis Paulson was one. Bill Schertz is somebody I was not familiar with.
I do not know who that
Dennis
is.
was from, he was
right
from
here in Lawton.
Yeah, here in Michigan. So
people know him later on as a prominent beagler.
Yeah.
But I forgot that he was a Coonhound field rep. He was a plot man.
Yeah, and then there was another one. Paul Jones was another new name that I see on the list here. But another name that I see here for the first one that is still there at the Liberty Club, and that's Donnie Huber, was one of the judges there.
That's a young Donnie in that final cast photo. If you go look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wade Jones, Ray Woods, and Donnie Huber were involved in that final cast. Yep.
And the winner that year in 1980 was first time it's a non-walker winner. This was an English coonhound named Fuller's Red Rooster, a dog owned by Paul Fuller in Kentucky.
Yeah, Paul just passed away several years ago in the last couple of years, and somebody had contacted me, Stephen Davenport, who's also just recently passed now, but wanted the picture of old Rooster that I sent to him that they had in his, for
Memorial.
Yeah, for his memorial and everything. But yeah. And, another one that I recognize from the Columbia City Club where I kind of started out, I guess, and was Donaldson's Indiana Stubby. That dog was in the finals that year, and I remember Larry Donaldson's dog. And, I hear guys at the club talking about old Stubby a lot.
I did not know that's where he was from.
Yep. And then looked like they just had a 3-dog final that year. Was Tip's Tennessee Rambler, a black and tan, was also in that final cast. But then obviously it was Fuller's Red Rooster, an English dog here, and also won the World Championship there in the 1980 World Championship finals. He was off of a Grand Night named Fuller's Hopsing, so I'm not too familiar, I guess, with that pedigree or anything, but just off of a PR female named Fuller's Betsy. So it looks like kind of a homebred English dog there of Paul Fuller's.
In 1981, it kind of headed northwest to LeGrand, Iowa. So
your first world championship was also in LeGrand.
That's right.
About 40 years later, but yeah.
I wonder then, you're 4 years into the world championship. I'm trying to put myself in that seat. How big of a gamble is it to put it in a place like Iowa, where a lot of people have to travel a long ways?
Good coon population.
That's right.
It is, and always has been. Obviously, here early on already, you were going out there.
Yeah.
Still a strong entry, 148 night hunt entries that year. And this year, kind of a notable thing about our winner this year, who was Grand Night champion Lewis's Rebel. That was a tree and walker coonhound owned by Jennings Lewis in Kentucky. That dog was out of a world champion. So here we are in the 4th world champion, and we already have a world champion out of a world champion. It was out of the Mullen Sugar Creek Rip dog that won back in 79.
That had to be a big thing back
then. That's
then.
What we were saying earlier. People were seeking those pups out of world champions. That's what that title did.
Yeah. And here's the first one right here.
Yeah.
So that was 1981. So yeah, about 4 years later. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and so in 1982, it moved just a little bit south of the LeGrand there in Sedalia, Missouri, which if you're listening to this right now and you've been looking at our World Championship event ad, you'll see we do have a zone in Sedalia there this year. And this year, same number of entries, 148 entries this year, and actually a new format, which I thought was really interesting. And it's almost a format that has stood the test of time and pretty similar to what we have going on right now. And you still had the 4-night finals, but all dogs that didn't scratch out on the first night, which is Wednesday night, also got to hunt on Thursday night. So it was almost like a double qualifying night. And the top 20 dogs from those 2 nights advanced to night 3, which Friday night.
Yeah, it's kind of like the zones we have now, except they're happening on Wednesday and Thursday. It's kind of interesting. That had to be a
good change.
Yeah, it was a good change. But if you think starting on Wednesday, that's a long week of hunting.
Ooh. It is. That's a lot of casts.
Stressing out a host club, isn't it?
Yeah, in today's world, it certainly would, for sure. The one thing I'm seeing here, again, talking about field reps, a new name I'm seeing here is Larry Packey, guy from Pennsylvania. He was a character, wasn't he, Todd?
Oh my gosh.
You knew him better than I did. But
some of my favorite stories were told by Fred Moran and Larry Packey, and usually about jokes they pulled on each other, and I used to laugh.
He was a good rules guy here. Everybody
very intelligent man.
Yeah.
Very intelligent.
He was very influential with the youth stuff. First youth events for UKC.
Yeah, Miss Old Packey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something kind of interesting here, and I would have been interested to be a fly on the wall in the meetings when they were talking about and discussing on how this new format looks. But so how it works, you have those 2 qualifying nights. The top 20 dogs advance to the Friday night into, I guess you could call it the quarterfinals, whatever you want to call it. But though you pick the double cast winners advance first, followed by single cast high scores, just like it is now. But those top 20, instead of drawing them out in 5 4-dog cast or in some sort of configuration like that, they actually hunted alone. 21 dog casts with 2 non-hunting judges on each cast, and the 4 highest scoring dogs from those 20 got to advance to the final cast right away. Kind of a intriguing
odd way to do
format.
Yeah, it is a little different. Yeah.
And one interesting note here, Saturday night at the final cast, deadline 4 a.m. If you take a look at the scorecard in the magazine, the return deadline on there, 3:59 a.m. I bet who was ever sitting in our chairs there as event officials was pacing the floor that year.
Well, not just the event official, the handler.
Yeah, no kidding.
The handler be like, shoo.
You think they were abiding by the speed limit on the way?
I don't, yeah, who knows?
Too close for comfort.
The 1982 world champion is a name that's still synonymous today. You hear it a lot, and that's Rock River Banjo. Banjo was a 3-year-old Walker male, and he's owned by David Blankenship and Harvey French. He ended up winning that cast with 550 plus.
Yeah, up until this point, the dogs winning the world champions winning these hunts or whatever, their sires and dams weren't all that decorated. But here, he was off of a Grand Night Diamond Jim, Swinney's Diamond Jim, and his dam was also a Grand Night, Derrickson Singing Billy. So, magazine spread on the world champion is now up to 20 pages for this year.
Yeah, the first world championship, 6 pages. Now here in the fifth world championship, we're up to 20 pages already.
Yeah.
You know what else I'd like to know? How big the magazine was in total.
I know.
That magazine
subscriptions.
was thick. I mean, page count.
Yeah.
It was big back then.
It was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very big. And probably an event like this that just probably, people didn't, they didn't. When did they find out who won? Probably not till a month or two later after when they got the magazine. Yep. At this time, at this point.
Yeah, and then you're looking at the final cast here. Make a note here: Beller's Kentucky River Striker, as most people know him as, here in the final cast. Keep that in mind because that's going to come into play. You'll hear that name a couple times here. Next year, 1983, down in Mayfield, Kentucky, 205 night hunt entries. So that's the first time that this event's now topped 200 entries.
Yep, and another thing, Mayfield, Kentucky, they're now going to a little bit different part of the country where their terrain looks quite a bit different than it did in Flora, Illinois, LaGrande, Iowa, Liberty, Indiana, and those
Coon
places.
Population a little different.
Probably a little different, hilly, and it probably looked a lot different.
Yeah. One interesting thing about this, and we were just looking through there, you're seeing pictures and how things work because you're just interested. 1983, how does it differ from 2023? Whenever I was there putting on the hunt. Yeah,
some new names I'm seeing as far as event officials go, or field reps as we call them. Joe Brizendine, I'm not sure who he was. Johnny's Bill Frenette, Ron Howe from here around Reading, Michigan, not far from the office. I did not realize he was a rep.
Yeah, I remember that. And then Bill Frenette was from the Northeast.
Yeah, James Lofton, Fred Lubert, Les Rogers, Max Summerlin, Sid Underwood from from Texas.
Yeah. What a smart man right there.
Yeah.
One thing they did a little bit different than today. Me and you pine on that Saturday who we're going to use as our night hunt judges on that podcast, and it's a huge recognition for that person.
It is, and I can kind of see that. And on this, we see that Mr. Roy Trammell is somebody they selected. And now today he's one of the legends in the sport. And a lot of the hunters loved old Roy. Roy was just a great guy, to work with, and he was a hunter too, and
well respected.
He was well respected. Yep, old Roy Trammell.
And the world championship there in 1983 was Indian Creek Pride. Pride was an 8-year-old Walker male owned by James Bogard Jr., and he was also the handler for old Pride that year. 275 plus won in the world championship.
Yep. He was off of, here we go, just a registered dog. Scotton's Missouri Boone was his sire, and his mother was also just an open registered, not titled dog, Davidson's Queenie.
Coon dogs.
Yeah, must have been. Yeah, must have been. So 1983.
In 1984, the event shifted to Princeton, Indiana. We got to see 236 entries entered in here. And did you want to talk about any of those reps there?
Well, there's Larry Packey again. C.D. Watson is a new name that pops up here on this year. He was a blue tick guy from Georgia, I think.
Somewhere down there.
Georgia, C.D. Watson. Yeah. Yep.
And that year, another dog that you still hear up today, Smith's Hillbilly Mac. Mac at that time, it was a 4-year-old, a tree and walker male, obviously owned by Ray B. Smith and handled by John Hyman.
Yeah, that's that always reminds me when I see that one of my first dogs that I had the best success with and probably learned the most about night hunts with was a grand pup off old Hillbilly Mac.
Yeah,
dog named Bandit, but I loved that dog. He was kind of Hillbilly Mac was kind of an open spotted dog, kind of a white looking dog.
Oh.
This one I was hunting was the same way, but yeah.
And then in 1985, just not too far away from there in Columbia City, Indiana, was the World Championship.
Yeah, my home club.
Your old stomping grounds,
yeah,
huh?
Sure is.
That year, 267 night hunt entries and 80 bench show entries, and just a kind of a cool year.
The first
I think,
bench show,
altogether.
right?
Yeah, they brought the bench show into it for the first time, and 80 entries. Not too bad for a first year.
First year for a bench show, and another new name on the list, field rep list, Lindell Price from Virginia. One of my favorites. Just a good guy. I always loved Lindell, and just the way he always addressed the judges and things like that at the World Hunt.
And he had the honor of judging a lot of our first events, right?
Yep.
Over the years.
I think they used him at the Winter Classic, the first Winter Classic for the show, and
American Heritage.
Yeah, a lot of firsts. So
and then here, one of the first judges, or the first judge at the first Coonhound World Championship bench show, along with Dick there. Dick, what's the last name there?
Dick Scheit.
Yep,
Dick Scheit. 80 entries for the show, for the first world show that they had. I'd say that would have been pretty good.
That's a
Seems
success.
like.
Heck yeah.
That first winner was actually a plot hound named Peoples Smokin' Joe. Joe was owned and handled by Danny Peoples, so won the first bench show there. But in the hunt, it was kind of a significant year as well because they changed the format a little bit, and we're seeing that's kind of a recurring theme here. We start out, we want to have an elimination style hunt. Things change as the years go on here. Now in 1985, after the Wednesday and Thursday qualifying nights, on Friday, it's going to change up a little bit. There's 2 rounds on Friday. First is going to be the hunt alone round, which lasted into the 2020s, the hunt alone round. If you have plus points on your card at the end of your hunt alone round, you get to advance to the second round on Friday night, where you're drawn into cast to determine who's going to the final cast.
Yeah. Makes the first thing that comes to my mind is why they didn't do it the other way around. Do the 4-dog cast first and have a lot fewer ones to run alone, but hey, it's just the way they did it.
Yeah, and then you look at the judges there. Curtis Elbringer there near Columbia City, and Curtis is a name that you'll see in here. Just a few of them that I saw coursing over the magazines that judged multiple final World Championship casts.
And today we see him still very active, but he shows a lot, and has for the last 10, 20 years. But back in the day, he was very active as a hunter, and obviously you can tell he must have been a pretty decent judge because he used him to judge the World Finals. Cecil Herendeen is another name that I recognize on here as one of the judges. He was from from the Columbia City area too. I didn't really know him that well, but the guys at the club used to always talk about old Cecil.
Talk about when I look through the history of the event and some of the final casts, this is one that I would have liked to walk along with. You have Beller's Pac-Man, who was directly off the Kentucky River Striker, who's obviously we're going to talk about Pac-Man a lot. Donaldson's Indiana Stub, who's in the final cast for the second time in a 4-year period or 5-year period here. And then the overall world champion that year was Miller's Beaver Lake Magic. And Magic at the time was 7-year-old Tree and Walker male owned by Charles Miller and Brian Ruckman, and Brian was the handler that night. Yeah,
Brian's he's still around, and he's a kind of a retired farmer there, in the local area. But Brian's a big old burly guy.
Is he still hunting?
He's still hunting. He just pleasure hunts mostly, but he came to Autumn Oaks last year, I think it was. Yeah, I remember he came down there. He and his wife came down there. But anyway, Beaver Lake Magic in the Columbia City area, that was a big name. He was Charlie Miller owned the dog, and Charlie was an old farmer. Had his farm was out there just a little bit east of town, and when he retired, he turned that farm into a golf course, and he named it after Beaver Lake Magic. So
Magic Hills.
Magic Hills, yeah. My brother Paul and I used to play there. So you play hole number 3 was right in the backside of his barnyard. And Charlie was a golfer too. So whenever he'd see us, he'd buzz out there on his golf cart, and we'd play 3. And then 4, hole number 4 was a dog leg right over in front of a pond. But right where it made that dog leg was a big old oak tree. And old Charlie used to always talk, right there's where old Magic is buried right there. But I swear he used to always just come along there. It seemed like it never failed. He wanted to say something or talk something about Magic.
Magic, yeah.
I don't know. And then we'd play that last hole, and then he'd buzz back to the farm, But
yeah, I tell you,
had a
1985 I was just sitting here thinking that has a lot of memories for me because that was the first UKC World Coonhound Championship that I attended in person.
You had a pup off it.
I had a
didn't you?
pup, and,
Yeah.
and the ironic thing is, it was a started dog, and he was running and treeing, but I lost him a couple days before the Saturday finals. We didn't have tracking collars, you know. We'd leave a coat out, and he'd bump a deer and a fox just often enough to frustrate you. So I go down to the event. I rode down with Larry Wardinger and Bill Ford, two of the guys that I spent a lot of time coon hunting with. And we went down to watch the show and see who was in the finals. Because there again, you don't know. You can't just get on your laptop and see.
Yeah.
I get down there and Beaver Lake Magic is in the finals. And here I've got a pup out of him that's
Lost somewhere.
And oh man, so I was super happy to see Brian win it, and I found my pup later that week, so everything turned out fine. But man, that's going back a few years.
You know, you read some stories about that hunt, and there was a lot. Magic sounded like Magic put on a pretty good show that week.
Yeah, and you got to remember, Magic was one of the dogs that ran every year for a few years there in the Curing race, and him and Brian, they made the rounds.
You know, obviously a local dog. He was as local as probably any dog that was in the hunt. But not just that, but Donaldson's Indiana Stub was in the final cast again. Larry Donaldson's dog, he wasn't that far away, an hour south. And then another one, Beller's Pac-Man, is in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Three dogs. It looks like just had a 3-dog final that year.
Yep. Yeah. So move on to the next year. There in 1986. World Championship was in Marion, Indiana. 304 night hunt entries that year, and a little bump there on the bench show entries up to 84.
Yeah, another increase. Hey, I'm seeing some field reps. New name, Fred Lubert.
Oh man,
You hear that name a lot.
From Missouri, Redbone man.
Yeah, Barry Halter, Joe Turlington. I don't know who that was.
From out west.
Yeah, and Gene Hicks. Some of your relation there.
Yep, I know Gene
Tennessee,
well.
Black and Tan.
Yeah, there you go. Bill Frenette, Summerlin, Max Summerlin. There's Larry. Jim Simpson from Indiana.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, he was a good one,
Him and
wasn't
Patty.
he? And then Riley LaFoon.
Oh yeah, he was a good old
Mississippi.
Black and Tan
Yeah.
man from Mississippi.
Yeah.
Eventually went route of Beagles.
Yeah, there you go. And Max Summerlin judged the bench show that year.
Kind of interesting. Now we just bring a handful of reps, 3 or 4 reps, depending on where we are and things like that. But then you had a whole list of them.
They'd send them all and give them different jobs, but it created a real tight bond and a tight group. And those guys loved it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, hey, scouring through the magazines, I always love doing that. You always find some interesting notes and tidbits here and there. One note right there on the first page of the magazine, a November 1986 issue, tells you, effective January 1st, 1987, your club now has the option of holding 2 or 3 hour hunts. I bet that was a big deal in the coonhound world at that time.
Yeah.
And it does reference that the Friday night hunt alone round here at the 1986 World Championship was a 2-hour hunt. So that's the first time I've ever seen that notated in any event recap. So here in the final forecast, looking at the judges there's Curtis's name again. So 2 years in a row that he was a member of the judges there in the final cast.
Yeah, and then Larry Donaldson, who had been in the final cast the year before with Stubb, and then Rick Kreider. That's another name I remember from around that area.
And the 1986 world champion was Beller's Pac-Man.
There he is again, 2 years in a row, makes the finals. Second year he ends up winning it. But yeah, Russell Beller.
Pac-Man was 4-year-old that year. He's a tree and walker male, obviously owned and handled and bred by Russell Beller.
Yeah. Had 3 walkers and a blue tick. Smith's Ohio Rock was another walker in the cast and placed second that year. Blue tick Stan's Blue Lucky, it was third, and Morgan's Tree Jam and Mundar was fourth that year.
And the overall show winner this year, kind of keeping to the theme so far here, People's Smokin' Joni, who was actually out of the world champion People's Smokin' Joe, who won it the year before in the inaugural bench show, owned and handled by Danny Peoples.
Yeah, how about that?
Impressive.
Father, and then offspring right the next year.
Keeping with the theme here, in 1987, the event was again in Indiana, this time down the road in Logansport. 385 night hunt entries that year with 108 bench show entries. So a good increase there. Judging the show that year, Gene Hicks and Lindell Price.
Yep, there you go. New reps I'm seeing here, Nubbin Moore, Arnold Moore from Alabama, black and tan guy.
Yep.
He still comes to
guy.
Still comes to Autumn Oaks every year.
Yeah.
And Bobby Dennison from West Virginia is another new
Walker
name there.
man.
Yep, there you go.
Looking at this is the 10th World Championship here, and I kind of put down some numbers to compare it to the first one. 46 RQEs in 1978 at that first World Championship. Now we have 81 RQEs in 87. in 24 different states, and actually 5,565 entries in those 81 RQEs. So some pretty good ones.
Yeah, that's good numbers, and that's probably about as good as it ever got right there.
Yeah, I know those were years where we used to reward the field reps with a Centennial Award like certificate for RQEs over 100.
Yeah.
And we had several, like a lot of them.
And you did all that at the World Finals every
Yeah,
year?
at the field rep meeting.
Oh, yeah.
But they were some big RQEs.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of a catch-22 to be a member of that club.
Oh,
You gotta put on a
hard work.
Underdog hunt.
Yeah.
But, one notable thing here, this is the last year of the UKC World Championship that doesn't have a zone semifinal. And probably a big reason for that is you're talking about this many entries. Just to kind of quantify this, on Wednesday night, 347 dogs went to the woods in round one. And back in those days, there's 2 non-hunting judges per cast. So that's 87 casts, 2 non-hunting judges per cast. That's 174 non-hunting judges on a Wednesday night.
Can you imagine it being your job to get all the judges put together?
You couldn't do it today.
Oh, man.
I don't think you could.
Anybody who wasn't hunting or knew anything about...
That's what definitely forced the issue with the zones.
Oh, man, yeah.
Which was a good change.
Yeah, yeah.
In 1987, anybody who is a historian or keeps track of the history of the Coonhound World Championship probably knows 1987 was a tough year, as in no night hunt world champion this year.
Yeah, there's you hear all kinds of stories, this and that, but it sounds like they might have had an opportunity. I don't know.
That's what the rumor is, and I don't know. That was before I started, but of course, you hear the stories.
Yeah,
and it sounds like there was some, there was an opportunity there to crown a world champion, and some handlers got involved, and dogs weren't called, treed, and
ended up with nothing.
Ended up with dark cloud over the hunt.
Well, it is, but the one other notable you see here, Beller's Pac-Man, 3 years in a row he's in the final. The first year he was in 1 year. Next year he comes back and wins it, and here he is 3 years in a row. He's in the finals of the World Championship.
That's tough.
And a big entry like that. Yeah. No wonder he was a big name.
Yeah,
not just that, but yeah.
Didn't mention it last year when Pac-Man won, but Pac-Man's it's out of Kentucky River Strick, and so we're talking about now we're at the 10th anniversary, and Pac-Man has been in 3 of them. Striker has been in 2 of them, so 5 of the 10. Russ Beller's had one of those 2 dogs in, so kind of notable.
Yadkin River Tom Tom's also a name that's synonymous within the breed, so he was in this one as well.
Yep.
Bench show winner this year was a dog named Debbie's Diogen Rebel.
Yeah,
Diogen Rebel. Yeah, grand champion dog off a Flat Branch Bow, and the mother was Mary's Buckeye Tiny.
Yeah, that dog is just a 1-year-old, black and tan, owned and handled by Debbie Montague.
Yeah, there you go. And the other thing I note you have here, the photo spread of the World Championship has increased to 39 pages now.
Wow.
Getting bigger and bigger.
Getting bigger.
I'll have to double check, but I'm almost positive 1978 issue is not even 39 pages long.
Well, and I know it's a different world we live in now with the internet and all this, and it's really hurt magazines, all magazines really for the most part. But we have a library where we save the old magazines. Sometimes you go over there and look at some of the old magazines, like from this era right here we're talking about. It's amazing how thick they were.
Oh, yeah.
I bet that just really, subscribers were probably much easier to get back in those days for sure.
I'll sound old school here, I
Cooner
guess.
was good. Full Cry was good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll sound old school here, but you can look at results online and even a group of pictures online or whatever, but nothing can tell the story of an event better than a good magazine spread put together with stories and pictures and everything.
Yeah, so 1987, the World Championship started in 1978, and we're up to this year will be our 47th, but 1987 is still the only one that, knock on wood, where they didn't name a winner.
Yep.
The next year was actually a pretty good year. We headed to Mount Gilead, Ohio, and we know now that it's been there several times, but that was the first time in Mount Gilead, Ohio, and that was the first time that you were there, Todd.
Oh, man, so this is the year I got hired at UKC, which would have been in May. So it was my first World Championship as an employee, and man, did I ever screw up.
Really?
I'm not kidding.
Let's hear about this.
One of the worst phone calls I've ever had to make, and I know I've told you this because you know the person.
Larry Pattison.
So it was the first year for zones, and so the staff members, Steve Fielder, Sarah Jonas, myself, I forget, maybe John or Tom Miller, we all worked a zone just to carry the scorecards out and back, whatever else. We'd have representation there. I don't know if I was sitting in it. I know my zone was in Iowa. And this might have been the first event I ever even worked alone, right? Because I was going to the breed days with Fred and Steve. So I get out there. I think it was on my way home. I think it was at an airport. I'm looking through scorecards, and I placed 20th place wrong. And I'm like, oh no. So Larry Pattison was the dog in 20th place. And I had to call him and say, Larry, you didn't make it. You know, this other dog did. And I'll tell you, he was a total sportsman about it. He must have been floored, but and we were friends for all those years after that.
He's a great guy.
But it was, oh man, that was a phone call I did not want to make.
You know, I think if you work here long enough, you'll get into something like that. And those are tough calls. Ooh. You know, I don't know if you remember, but I had something a little similar was with Autumn Oaks, where we placed 2 dogs that after we call them out, you know, somebody comes up, hey, you know.
Oh yeah.
And it was a computer glitch that didn't pick those up, but that is tough. Man. Tough,
I felt bad.
Hey, that year in 1988.
But that's also how you learn. You make sure you double and triple check after that.
You sure do.
Yeah.
So 1988 in Milton Gilead, Ohio, 462 night hunt entries there. So we're creeping up on that 500 number. But probably the most notable thing, and I kind of previewed it there in 87, went to the zone semifinal format you were kind of alluding to there a little bit. And you divided the nation into 4 separate zones. And the first 2 nights were hunted there at the zone quarterfinals. And, you know, the ways the zones worked then, the zone that you were assigned to, depending on your dog's registration, wherever the first owner, their address, they were bound to the zone that they were going to go to, and the top 20 dogs at the zone quarterfinal placements would move on to the final cast, and that's how it worked. And I'd say it worked out pretty well, right?
Yep.
Do you remember making those decisions? And
so that would have, I'm sure Steve had that done prior to May. I mean, the RQE season's already started then, so that was made kind of before I got here. But I was brought along and trained, you know, on that format.
Yeah.
You're talking about, in 87, 385 night hunt entries. In 88, you got 462 night hunt entries. So, you know, almost a 20%, 25% increase there in entries. And I don't know, just thinking about it, I was kind of thinking about myself a little bit. Zones are, typically a zone's going to be a lot closer to you than wherever the world finals are. That may have led to more pre-entries into the event, I would say.
Yep. Yeah, and the big winner that year.
Yeah, the big winner in 1988 was a Plott, the first and only Plott dog. That was Kansas Sizzlin' Heath. That was a 5-year-old male Plott dog owned by Jim Cannon and Spud Reynolds and handled by Jim Cannon.
Yeah, Jim was a great guy, too. I always liked Jim.
And real consistent winner with his Plott dogs.
Yep, he was. Cannon's Kansas Joe Boy was the sire of that dog. That's a name. I'm not a Plott guy, you know, but that's a name that I always kind of saw somewhere. Short Ridge's Queen was his mama, and
placed at a lot of major events if you go through the history.
I'll tell you one of the things that I remember most about that finals in Mount Gilead was I can't say it was the final night. It could have been the night before, but we're all sitting in there in the headquarters, all the reps, myself, Steve. We're probably, back then we used to play guitars, Riley LaFoon, Gene Hicks. A lot of people could play guitars. It was fun. And in comes this guy. You know, there's a crowd of people in there, rips his shirt off, like his T-shirt, rips his shirt off. He's hollering, tipping over tables, and he goes over and starts pounding on Homer Hutchinson right in front of the whole crowd. I can't even remember the guy's name. I don't know if it was something that happened on a cast or what, but
no kidding.
He got barred, obviously. But it was like, holy smokes.
You probably didn't know Homer Hutchinson. He's from over there by Ashland, I think, around the Ashland Club over there in Ohio. But yeah, good guy. He hunted English dogs.
Oh man, I sat there in shock, like, what the heck?
So that was your first year.
That was my first one,
yeah.
And then over in the bench show ring that year, the world bench show champion was Whitewater Raging Bear, 2-year-old tree and walker male owned by Paul Phillips and held by Daryl Prunty.
Yeah, Dale Prunty there. He won. The sire of that dog was Dale's dog, White River
Rick.
White River Rick. Yep. And And he was an automotive winner, old Rick was.
Yeah, those are nice dogs.
Yep, Mountain State Poly was the name.
Dogs.
Hey, opposite sex there, Doc Lyer's Shady Lady. That must have been Doc Birdsall, probably. Yeah. Yep.
Going to hear that name a lot in this episode.
Yeah, yeah. 1988.
So the next year, 1989, the last year in the 80s decade, we went to Montgomery City, Missouri. So
See, Montgomery
You know what
City.
else is in Montgomery City, Missouri?
Wick's Outdoor.
Wick Outdoor.
Yeah.
So this event, the fairgrounds, was right straight across the parking lot.
Was it?
From Wick? Yeah, you could walk back and forth from the fairgrounds.
I went there one time. I think the zones were somewhere in Missouri that I ended up going. We drove down there and went to Wick Outdoors.
I think that was the first time I met Mark Zepp.
Oh, wow.
Would have been that year because him and I started real close to the, maybe just a year apart.
Yeah.
So that's what I remember about that event for sure.
Yeah, bench show entries are increasing a little bit. They're up to 118 here, I see.
Yeah, and knocking on that door there,
Yep.
492 900 entries, close to 500.
Yep. Field reps, a new name I'm seeing here, a couple, David Hiller and Barry Saylor, Harry Lister.
Oh,
See,
man,
Harry
he
Lister
is one of
in
my
Texas.
favorites.
So there's let me see, that's Ray Stevens is another one, but Harry Lister, isn't he the one that used to shoot
the slingshot.
Slingshots.
Shooting demonstrations
in
right
Texas or something, yeah. Off a horse, right?
No, I mean, he rode mules.
Did he ride
He was
mules?
a big mule guy.
Yeah.
But no, he didn't. I'm sure he shot him plenty, but not in a demonstration that I didn't see. Or
I thought that maybe
I did.
At the
Maybe he
American
did.
Heritage or something. I thought they talked about that he used to do some.
He made a couple of them for me. I still have them.
Oh, yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
cool. Very treasured things.
Old Harry Lister.
This year here in 89, they actually implemented a system adding additional 1 hour intervals. They added this into the rule book on final cast to avoid the same thing that happened in 87 where you could hunt additional hour intervals to try to get a plus point cast winner.
Yeah.
And it almost came into play. It talks in the magazine write-up. It talks about the bad weather that came from Hurricane Hugo down south and the after effects of that coming up and caused a bunch of dead cats. And Montgomery City is probably known for their coon population, a great place to tree coons. But it actually this year they crowned a world champion on Friday night. There was no final cast this year because only one dog advanced
That's
the
right.
semis.
I remember
No
that. It's a
kidding.
female Walker female, wasn't it?
Yeah, this dog this year in 1989
Crawley's
was
Louise.
Crawley's Louise.
Yeah.
That was a 6-year-old Tree and Walker female owned and handled by Douglas Crawley.
Hey, look, first female now. We're on what number is this for World Championships? 1989.
Should
So we're
be the
talking
12th one here.
12th one. 11 males up to this, being the first female to win.
Even though females
Crawley's
won the
Louise.
first 2 TOCs.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it goes back to old Hickory Nut Harry. Kentucky's old Hickory is the sire, but Paul's Hickory Nut Harry is the grandsire to old Louise. And Dotson's Fly was the mother. Johnson's Big Jack, River City Queen on the bottom side. I'm not familiar with that pedigree there, but yeah, there we go.
World show champion that year was Finley River Little Hawk. That was a 2-year-old Walker male at the time, owned by Robert Mings and Susan Payton.
Yeah, that's a name you hear quite a bit. Finley River Nighthawk is another one, the daddy to that dog. They're a sire to it. Yeah.
1990 went south all the way down to Clanton, Alabama. And you would think, who knows, entries could take a big dive there, but 560 night hunt entries. That's the first time we've seen it in the fives.
Yeah, we've had our zones there in Clanton, Alabama here, just in the the modern era here or whatever, and that area is still pretty. They still draw good area right there around Clanton.
Yeah, in 1990, the world champion was Tony's Wild Joey. That was a 3-year-old Walker female. So here we got 2 females in a row now, owned by Tony and Joy Daviduck.
Yeah,
handled
out
by
of
Tony.
Good.
Yeah, out
good
of Pennsylvania.
people.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was always in
Yeah.
a good mood. and
Yep.
Good to be around.
Lee Logan, that's all
Yeah.
Logan's breeding there.
Yeah, that's
Wild
Clover.
Joey. Yep, Logan's Wild Clover is the sire, goes back to Owens Hardwood Bozo and Wild Julie on the top side. Then the bottom side is this dog was bred to the hilt, really. Riverbend Flag, was Jeannie, or Joey's mama, Jeannie, was off a Riverbend Flag. And then McGill's Lone Pine Jill on the bottom side. So, yeah, as far as a pedigree goes, that's about as good as it gets in terms of grands and all that in that 3-generation pedigree.
All grand before it was cool there, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Lee Logan, we still see him at the events. He's like one of the Bobby Dennis and all, so he's called him a living legend.
Yeah.
And then over in the bench show ring that same year, the world champion was Capital City Sam. Sam was a 4-year-old plot male at that time, owned by Lakita Brinkley and handled by Johnny.
Yeah,
Brinkley.
Johnny, I guess they always lived in Florida, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, just
Great
plot.
people.
Yeah. Well,
That dog did a lot of winning and produced a lot of winners in the
opposite
bench
sex.
shows.
Yeah, opposite sex. That year was a blue tick, Steel Blue Fly. See, I'm trying to think who owned that dog, Steel Blue Fly.
I remember.
Yeah. Fly was kind of a common name for a blue tick female, seemed like. Steel Blue Fly.
In 1991, moved up a little further north from there, Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Yeah, you remember that one,
Oh, I do.
Todd? Yeah.
Yep.
So always little things. I know you guys
It's
struggle
little
a little.
things like
yeah.
so. I know in this one is where I met Tom Dooley,
Okay.
who soon came on the UKC staff.
Yeah.
After that event, but yeah, that was the one where we had to use the 1 hour extensions. I think 2 of them
Really?
to get a world champion.
Yeah.
It almost came out. Sounds like it got into daylight before you ever got one treated.
Yeah, and I don't know. Did you have in your notes? Was it bad weather or? You're in Tennessee, so
Yeah.
you're not in heavy coon population right there anyway. Right?
Yeah, it does notate bad weather that weekend, and I actually made a note in there. It's kind of I guess it was Steve at the time, kind of taking up saying a lot of people wanted us to move it because of the bad weather on that weekend. It's not that easy just to move a world final.
No, you got all the plans are made.
Yeah, and so I found that funny because we get that sometimes about her TOC falling on this certain date and this and this. Like there's something every weekend in the spring and fall. You can't just be moving things around. There's tons of plans in place ahead of time. But yeah, bad weather and there was like you said, it was a 2-hour final cast. At the completion of the final cast, they started using those 1 hour intervals. And Eddie had handled those first 2 hours. He hunted an additional interval, didn't tree a coon. Hunted an additional interval, didn't tree a coon. And then the sun was coming up. He woke up his brother Bob, who was in the car, and said, "You hunt him." His feet. He's talking about his feet blisters and galled it up and everything. And his brother Bob treated a coon. He said it got treated at 7:37 a.m. during that third interval.
Jeez.
Man.
Were you out there on that cast?
No, at that time we weren't going on cast.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Huh.
This is before we had started doing that.
Yeah, 623 night hunt entries that year, 188 bench show entries. Now, we haven't talked. Did they even have to qualify for the bench shows at that time? Or
Boy, I would have thought so.
Did they?
Yeah,
just like they do today. Yeah,
RQE bench shows,
just like that. Gene Hicks was the judge. Melissa Maitland, we know Melissa.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Maitland from Wisconsin, but she was a good judge. Excellent judge. Right, I remember. Yeah.
Actually, the first lady to ever judge a portion of the World Championship bench show.
Yeah,
so that's notable.
She was
1991. Yeah.
There was one note here that I found, interesting. We keep talking about the limitations of non-hunting judges and how that definitely the most stressful part of the hunts back in those times. I would have had to imagine it still is today, and we only have to get 20 some at most events. But Zone 2 on this weekend was so large, 195 dogs entered into Zone 2. So 2 non-hunting judges per cast, that's 98 non-hunting judges that you would need for your Friday night. What they ended up having to do was send out some of the casts early, and as they come in, reuse their non-hunting judges for a late round.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
I don't remember that.
Hey, this is also the year that they went big time TV for the first time in Murfreesboro. Yeah. Carolina Outdoors TV was there filming part of the stuff there that was to air on TNN or ESPN, I guess, that year.
I don't even know what TNN is.
Did you get to do an interview on TV that year, Todd?
I don't remember.
Also, a publishing firm from London, England sent some photographers there to take pictures.
Yeah, so kind of cool stuff. And we've kind of alluded to it now. Eddie Parker and his brother Bob Parker making the run at it here, and they ended up winning the world championship with Nelson's Radar, who at the time was a 5-year-old, a tree and walker male owned by Frank Martin.
Yeah, there you go. And Nelson's Radar goes back. House's Tom. That was his granddaddy, I guess. But Reeves' Tom Chuck was a sired old Radar, and the mother was Louisiana Crybaby.
Yep.
And over on the bench show side of things, the world champion Shorter's Virginia Ruger. That was a 4-year-old black and tan male owned by Andrew Shorter and handled by Kathy Shorter.
Yeah, Kathy Shorter. We're going to see her this year in the World Show.
Yeah, you got the handler here, Kathy Shorter, who's judging our first round, and the breeder on this dog, David Doc Birdsall, is going to be judging our final round. So
yeah, we're talking about this year's World Show.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
Yep, Kentucky River Candy was the opposite sex winner that year. So Kentucky River, that's
Lee
Curran's name. Yep.
Yeah, this is really hard for me to fathom here in these days and times. So you went from 90 in Alabama, in 91 in Tennessee, and then in 92 you went to Crockett, Texas.
Yeah,
I feel like we would be in we would be taking some hate mail by then from the people who wanted it up in the coon belt. But hey, the entries aren't really waning here. You know, you're still getting a good entries there when you're choosing these locations.
Yep.
A lot of thoughts go into that. One thing I noticed, and it's insignificant, really, the zone semifinals increased from 4 to 5. So you went from 80 dog finals to a 100 dog finals this year. And the world champion in 1992 in Crockett, Texas, was Cal's Big River Jesse. That was a 6-year-old English male owned by Rory Cows and handled by David Reeves.
Yeah, Indiana dog.
Man, I got a funny one about this one too. I'll never forget it. So those guys are out on the Rory wasn't there, so his handler and backup handler, they were out there. They come in on that cast in Texas, so you know it's hot.
And I don't know the handler. I've only seen pictures of him, but he was a scruffy looking dude.
Yeah.
He did comb his hair before he got his picture
and
taken.
They were soaking wet with sweat,
Really?
right?
Yeah.
And this guy, one guy's got must have been a PKC hat on, and we're like, this is going on the cover of Coonhound Bloodlines. We don't want a PKC hat on. That's how we did it back then. So he's like, that's all I got. And so someone says, give me your hat, Todd. I had a brand new, I just got it probably that day, a brand new Karina. Yeah. So I had to give him my hat for the photo. They take the photo. He goes to give me the hat back. I'm like, no, dude, you just keep it. It was all sweaty.
That's funny.
I'll never forget that.
Yeah. Kyle's Big River Jesse, Dark Shadow Joe, a Granite dog, was his sire. Boyd's Little Joe was the great grandsire there, or the grandsire, I guess you could say.
Yep.
Name you see a lot, but yeah.
Over in the show building, world champion that year, Hill's Sierra Red Queen. That was just a 1-year-old red bone female, owned and handled by O.W. Hill.
Yeah, she was the first red bone to win.
California dog.
Yeah, California dog. O.W. I remember him. He was an old cowboy.
Yeah, man. Big game hunter. Did a lot with those dogs.
Yep, I remember
when
I first started going to events or whatever, he would be there. He'd be at Autumn Oaks and yeah, he had a lot of his dogs. Kind of old Red Queen was in their pedigree. Yep. Sierra Commando. He was a big game hunter.
He was.
Hunted a lot of big game with his dogs.
Yep.
Yeah,
like that old guy.
Yeah.
93, we headed north, Van Wert, Ohio. Knocking on the door this year, almost 700 night hunt entries, 682, and man, what a list of field reps there.
Yeah, another new name that pops up here is Doug Sutherland. You know, and I just only kind of met Doug. He's from around Dromesville, Ohio. There, he works for some feed company now. But I saw him at some event over in Ohio this last year where he was doing a presentation and did a great job.
Yep.
But yeah, old Doug Sutherland, Bill Sherman. Remember Bill Sherman?
Montana.
Yep, Montana out west. He's on this
Great
year.
Guy.
Yeah, Dan Langlois. I didn't know
New
him.
York.
But another new name
Dan
here,
Donna.
Bill Kavner, Oklahoma.
Oh man.
You know, Bill. He's just. I haven't seen him in so long. I always liked old Bill.
Yep, everybody did.
Yep, good guy.
A bench show judge that year, Lindell Price. That's got to be about the third time he was a member of that.
Yeah. Him and then Robert Browning was another one. Robert was also kind of involved in the rules early on. Yep.
So when Saturday's final cast was over, the world champion in 1993 was Tricolor Tom Tom, a 3-year-old Walker male, owned and handled by Duke Prue.
Yeah, that's a name that.
And Duke would have been pretty young at that.
He would have been.
He was.
He would have been. Yep. Still hunting today.
When he first started going to hunts, his sister would drive him to hunts. He couldn't even drive yet. Yeah. I like that story.
Duke he lives up in Connecticut, and yeah. I've often wondered what the hunting's like up there. Probably a lot better than we might think, you know, never having been up there in that area or whatever. But and for him, as much as a guy like Duke hunts, and he has put on a lot of miles going to these coon hunts over the years. But yeah, this would be his first. And it wasn't his only world championship to win, but this was the first one with old Tom Tom. Al Nunneman was one of the judges that year. So he's a name that you still see today. He doesn't do nearly as much hunting anymore, but yeah. Tom Tom was in a cast with Beller's Handsome Harry, a stylish Thunder Girl, and a blue tick named Harpeth River Blue Ranger. 3 walkers and a blue tick that year.
The 1993 bench show winner was Doc Layer's Top Lady. That was a 2-year-old black and tan female, owned by Doc Birdsall and handled by Kathy Shorter.
Is that 2 years in a row?
2 years.
2 out of 3.
Yep, 2 years in a row. Yep. And then the opposite sex winner was a dog named Little Walnut Flying Hawk. I think that would probably be
Tammy.
yeah, probably so. Out of Missouri.
1994 was over in Greencastle, Indiana, and I see here they broke 700 entries for the first time into the zone. 701 night hunt entries that year. Mr. Dexter Watley, one of the bench show judges, along with Ronnie Smith, who would have done the finals of the bench show there.
Yeah, Ronnie, you know Ronnie.
Oh yeah, he's a character.
He is.
And so's Dexter.
Yeah, both of them are. Ronnie, I remember one thing about Ronnie was he would do all of our auctions, Redbone days and stuff.
He was so good at that.
He can sell ice to the Eskimos.
World champion winner that year in the hunt was Charlie Creek Tara. That was a 2-year-old Walker female owned by Dick and Kathy Brothers and handled by Dick.
Yeah, that was a good gyp. She comes from my neck of the woods there in South Whitley, Indiana, or what have you. But
you know what? That was a lawsuit.
Yeah, that was another kind of
that was a black cloud over that.
Yeah,
got resolved, but yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, that's and we've had that one other time since that, and those are.
Yeah,
you take them seriously, and you want to have things be done right, and that's why it is so important that you have put people in place that will help you get it right, and this and that, But some things are just out of your control sometimes, and things like this go on. But they're not fun to deal with for sure sometimes. But yeah, that's kind of the one there. But Charlie Creek Terrace, she was a good hound, and Dick always had good dogs, and that's who we had to compete against. And thank God I always guided and he did, but so we had to draw him sometimes, but he had a lot of good dogs down there. English dog that had 2 Treeing Walkers. Slayton's Ultimate Ugly was another dog in that cast. Then a Black and Tan Hills Black Mac, and a dog named Paleface Trampus was an English dog in that cast.
You see the guides on that cast there?
Doug Cundiff. And Tim Whitaker.
Oh, yeah.
Both from Indiana there.
Yep.
Kevin Enos, also from Indiana, one of the judges that in that cast. Robert Johnson.
Where'd you say it was? Greencastle?
Yeah, Greencastle. Yeah. World show champion that year was Capital City Sam's Go Annie. That was just a 1-year-old plot female owned by David and Sonia Finter and handled by David.
Hey, let me say something about that little. That was a good little dog.
Yeah.
You've probably seen her hunt and stuff, but she was a hunting dog too.
Yeah, he pounded the road with that dog.
He did, and I think that's I think a lot of Christina's dogs, Christina Farthing's dogs go back to this dog right here, Sam's Go Annie.
World show champion out of a world show champion out of the Sam dog.
Yeah, and then the opposite sex winner was a dog named Amy's Hammerin' Cowboy Bill, Black and Tan by Amy Smith. It used to work up here, Amy McDonald now, but
he was what, runner-up that year?
He was runner. It was opposite sex that year.
He's going to eventually win one, I think.
Yeah. I think
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
1995, it headed on the East Coast here, South Boston, Virginia. That year, you had a good
now you're getting back kind of in a little bit rougher hunting again.
A couple new, or at least I see a couple new field reps there.
Yeah, Charlie Cundiff he was our Indiana rep there, old Charlie, Doug's dad or whatever. Yeah. And I always liked old Charlie, but yeah, him and Steve Bannerman out of Missouri. There's another new name. And let me see, there's Bill Sherman again. Alan Roberts. Yep.
He'll be tickled to be.
Roberts and Bannerman became good buddies.
They did.
If Alan can figure out how to listen to this, he'll be tickled that we mentioned him.
Yeah.
Bench show judges that year, Ron Parker and Jay Benton doing the finals there. And this year, obviously, we went to the zone format, so the finals were just Friday, Saturday night. This year, started on Thursday, so 3-night finals, and that's how it is still today. So that move was made in 1995. Bad weather again played a factor this year. There were only 10 dogs remaining after the round 2 hunt alone.
Well, and we're in Virginia.
True. So, so 5 2-dog casts went out. 3 go to the final cast automatically. And for the 4th dog, you're going to take the 4th and 5th cast winners, and they get to hunt off late. So that's actually how the format was. It kind of stayed that format until early 2020s. So we'll get into more of that later. And this is the first time in the event recap that I remember it alluding to or talking about the use of an overhead projector with a scorecard display. Was it the first time it ever happened?
This has to be it. And I'm guessing Dooley was on the staff by then.
Yeah, it says Tom Dooley had an FM transmitter and called in the strikes and trees back to the master hounds at the trucks, and Max Summerlin used his cell phone to call you at the fairgrounds.
Max had a cell phone at that time already.
At the forefront of technology, Max was.
We had one of those old overhead projector things where you have a transparency and a grease pen. Yeah. And I'd be back in the office and you got people huddled around, drink coffee. You come out with that grease pen, they all huddle right over on the thing. And it was like, that was modern, you know. We were posting live updates.
Oh, it was. I remember when the first time when I saw it at LaGrange, where they did it there at the LaGrange Club. But they used to always kind of taunt you a little bit, you know, write something down or erase it and write something different down.
And you never put a plus sign or a minus sign on the last. You had to leave a little bit of suspense.
Yeah. From the stories I've heard of Todd Morgan, that sounds like something he would do. Is tease the crowd a little bit.
Well, usually it was a field rep from what I remember that would come in and write it down.
The cast winner this year was the first black and tan to ever win it. J&R Northern Buck 2. That was a 4-year-old black and tan owned by Randy Samuelson and Jeff Nelson and handled by Jeff Nelson. It's a long way from home, Jeff
Illinois,
was.
Isn't he?
No, this was the first black and tan doing it right here. Yeah.
Bench show winner that year was Boss's Little Bobby Lou. That was a 2-year-old English female owned by Vicky Hill and handled by Don Hill. So those were your 1995 world champions. Yeah. Looks like the opposite sex here. Little Walnut Flying Hawk. Seems like we just mentioned that dog.
Yep, we did. A
couple opposite sexes there.
Yeah.
1996, heading back to the Northwest here, Waverly, Iowa. Man, what a list of field reps. You guys were really starting to add up the field reps here. It looks like most of them may have already mentioned Leon Stewart.
Leon Stewart was from Mississippi. Yeah. He's new here. Starting this Larry Hawk from Ohio. He's one. Ron Houston. Yeah. So those were the new ones here that are on the list this year that we hadn't seen.
So
before.
You got field reps that are retiring, right? Like Riley LaFoon probably retired that year, and that's when Leon came on.
Dale Prunty was the bench show judge that year. He and Ron Houston.
Yeah, we talked about the coon population in Iowa back when we were talking about the 1981 World Championship. Here in 1996, when it's in Waverly, Iowa, this is the first time that I saw, looking through all the results, that all the round one casts had a plus point cast winner. So just kind of strengthens what we said about the Iowa coon population there. And this year the winner was Hannah's Creek Mac Attack. At the time, that was a 6-year-old dog, Tree and Walker male, owned by Mike Carmack and handled by Kenny Moore.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a story with that. Mike started handling that dog, and he turned the reins over to who was it? Who ended up finishing that? I shouldn't even mention it, but there was somebody else that finished handling the dog.
Kenny Moore.
Kenny Moore. That's Kenny Moore passed here several years ago, but it was Kenny that finished that cast there, I guess. Yeah. We can laugh about it now, but Mike got a little excited about something on that cast, and he turned the reins over. It might have been a good thing, but Kenny took over the reins and ended up winning the hunt. Crow Hill Candy's probably a name that you...
Were you in the hunts these years with
I was. No, this one, let me see, what year was this? I would have been probably about this, I would have been hunting at this time. Crow Hill Candy was a name she was running the Purina series at the time. Yep. And it was probably Duke Prue was probably handling her, but I would have loved to handle her hunt with that dog. Heard a lot of good stories about her. Missouri's Hustlin' Sue was a dog out of Missouri that was handled by Mike. Oh, what doggone it. I hate that I can't remember, but he came out of our zone. I remember my brother judged her, and that's the first dog I remember where she treated a possum and a raccoon in the same tree at the zone. So. And then McDonald's Hat Creek Fido. Just today we were talking about Ricky McDonald right there, Hat Creek Fido, a blue tick right there. So
it is some coon treeing on that final cast.
Yeah. So Hannah's Creek Mac Attack was off of just a PR dog. Moore's Chief Kentucky Spot and Odyssey's Kentucky Belle was a dam there. So just 2 PR dogs, but old Mac Attack.
Had Radar, Spring Creek Radar, and House's Lipper back there in the third gen.
Yeah, there you go.
Bench show world champion that year was Myers Patent Pending. That was a 4-year-old black and tan male owned by HL and Diane Meyer and handled by Mike Seitz.
Yeah, and didn't that dog also place in the hunt that year? Was it this dog, or it was one of those? It was one of Myers's dogs that won in the hunt and the show in the same year.
Remember
I think it was this dog.
Was it it was either this dog or the Beaujolais?
No, it would have been this. It was this one.
Yeah.
It was this one. Yep. 1996.
And in 1997, we're heading back down south to Boaz, Alabama.
Yep, and that's the year I always remember that, because just before the World Championship here, I bought my first brand new Chevy truck. In 1997.
Oh man,
brand new.
Got some miles on it. Huh?
Oh, I put a lot of miles on it.
If only the truck.
The thing
could
I
talk.
remember about Boaz was that community really stepped up. That was like the first time we saw a lot of community backing for an event.
Yep.
And I think they must have a big blue jean manufacturer there, because I think everybody in the top 100 got a free pair of jeans or something.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it was
I
hot
remember reading
too.
that.
I remember because I drove down there. It was hot. Like on Saturday, I remember I was there at the show, and it was like 93 degrees at like 7:00 in the morning, and it was just hot.
Judges that year, a couple guys who are well respected in their breeds. Lonnie Mears in the first round, and Gene Higgs judged the finals that year. And this was actually 1997 UKC's centennial year.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, field reps, another new name that pops up here. Jimmy Phillips from Georgia. Yeah, Jimmy, and yeah, I guess that's it. Lonnie Mears judged the show. Him and Gene Hicks. Yep.
and this was actually the 20th World Championship, and the winner that year was Lou Maker's Rocky Mountain Jasper. That was a 3-year-old tree and walker male owned by George Ciarelli and Lynn. I didn't have it. Basiuska, and handled by Duke Prue.
There's Duke again.
His second win there.
Yeah. Another thing I remember about, that's the year that Jim Ridge had one of his English hounds got run over in the semifinals. I think he ended up placing 6th, if I remember right.
That's right.
Was it Briar Creek Snake or one of them that got killed there in the hunt, and still ended up being the cast winner?
Yeah, jeez.
Was it Snake? No, it wasn't
I
Snake.
do not
it was
know
it was one of his dogs, but I remember that about Boaz, Alabama. Yeah, hey, Tricolor Tom was a sire to this Jasper dog, and he was kind of a smaller dog. I remember
He was.
Yep, I remember seeing him there, and yeah,
A world champion out of a world champion.
exactly. Yep,
Bench show winner. Here
there
she is.
There he is. Yep.
Amy's hammering Cowboy Bill. So there's Amy coming through with Cowboy Bill this year.
Yeah, and then the opposite sex winner, Warbonnet's Finley River Miss Tammy. That's a name. That dog won a lot. That just won everything but the world show. It seemed like little Tammy.
Same with Bill. I was glad to see him finally get in there for Amy. She did a lot with that dog.
Yeah.
He had a lot of titles, right? I mean, he was field champion.
Yeah, field champion, night champion, grand champion.
Yeah.
Yep. I can honestly still remember them showing those two dogs for that for the world championship in the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Amy. So we're talking about Amy Thomas here at the time. Now Amy McDonald. So.
Yeah.
And just one observation of me looking through the magazine, as I tend to do, UKC's webpage is official.
Oh, jeez.
There you go. The UKC website was born in 1997.
Yeah.
Oh, man, the forum was getting busy.
Yeah, and Miss Tammy, Natalie, at the time was Natalie Drake. She was young there. She's the one that showed Miss Tammy.
Yep.
Just really quickly, I remember the first time I met Natalie was she came to Columbia City to Walker Days. And she was the first person that came. We were still setting up at the fairgrounds, and she comes in there with a little red Camaro and had Miss Tammy in the back seat. And I thought, this is just, but, I didn't know her, and she's got this nice dog, and I think she won Walker Days or, did very well in the show. But, yeah, I kind of took notice.
Yeah.
Had a nice dog and a cute little girl handling the dog at the time. Natalie Drake, that was my first meeting of her.
Amy and Natalie, those are still in it, be showing head-to-head in the World Championship this year, I bet.
Yeah.
1998, we're back in Ada, Oklahoma. So we were back in Ada, the very first tournament of champions back in 1975. So here we are in 98, back in Ada, Oklahoma. Ben show judges that year, Doc Birdsall. So there he was, a judge that year, going to be a judge in 2024. That's a pretty big gap. I'd say that's one of the bigger gaps of it between judge and assignments.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Sid Underwood did the finals there in Oklahoma, probably not too awful far from his house. I know nothing's real close to Texas, but
yeah. New field rep that year was Bill Taylor.
Oh,
Came on from Texas.
Bill and Roxanne.
Yep. Yeah, another good guy.
Oh, yeah.
World champion that year in 1998 was Daniel's Duke. That was a 7-year-old tree and walker male owned by Terry Daniel and handled by Charlie Bidwell.
Yeah, you probably
Terry,
remember
longtime supporter of the Walker Association.
that.
And
Yep,
good guy.
that he ended up hunting beagles and came
Yep,
to beagle
he did.
trials too, and had a 3-dog cast of black or the Walker Daniels Duke, and then had a black and tan and a blue tick, tree bond dark hollow style, the black and tan, and a blue tick named Blue Scooter.
He showed me some pheasant hunting spots in Iowa too.
Oh yeah. Hey, judges that year, Gary Starnes was one of them, but Mike Grant. Mike Grant was he the baseball guy?
I don't know.
Okay. And then Alan Stonecipher. Those are all big names in the.
You're thinking he's one of the guys who owned Cutter.
Cutter.
You're thinking?
Yep. Crow and Grant's Cutter. That's him right there, Mike Grant.
World show champion that year was Hitson's Blue Buck. That was a 3-year-old blue tick male that year, owned by Robert and Melanie Hitson and handled by Melanie.
Out of Texas.
Texas,
Yeah.
dog. Yeah,
Sexton's
they
Blues.
made the circuit, didn't they?
Yeah, they sure
They
did.
put the miles
Yeah,
on.
they did.
He
Hey,
was
going
a
back.
big rodeo guy.
Yeah. Go. Daniel's Duke. His sire's name was Daniel's Dumb Dog.
Yeah.
Off of Findlay River Dan. Bottom side was a good pedigree too. Wick Stylish Banjo, a big name in the Walker breed. 1998.
And you talk about the show winner there, Hitson's Blue Buck. Both Sire and Dam both look like out of hunting pedigree there.
Yeah, yeah. And then the opposite sex winner, there's Capital City Sam's Go Annie again.
Mm-hmm.
Had already won the world show, came back as opposite sex winner.
Yeah. So 1988, we're in Mount Gilead. Here we are in 1999, going back to Mount Gilead here for the second time. And another great entry this year. You know, it kind of gets redundant here every year. Some pretty good entries, 645 and 182 this year specifically. Alan, I don't know if I see any new names on here.
I do. Dave Harp
there you
from
go.
New York.
Oh, yeah.
Dave Harp, yeah, New York. I remember Dave. He was also a good guy. He's passed quite a few years ago now.
Black and tan guy.
Yep.
Bench show judges this year talk about a dynamic
Lloyd
duo.
Culpepper.
Oh, yeah.
Lloyd's on here too.
Alabama.
Yep. First time we see Lloyd on here. Another guy I always liked Lloyd. Turkey hunter.
Oh, yeah.
Loved a turkey
He's
hunt.
ate up with it now.
Yeah. You still hear from Lloyd?
Oh,
at all?
yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, we stay in touch.
Gosh, I need to call him one of these days.
Yeah.
But the judges that year for the show, Johnny Brinkley and Lindell Price. There's Lindell again. So good duo there.
Mm-hmm.
I got a note here. Final cast went into an overtime period to get plus points on the card in this one here. And the winner ended up being Hillside Tree and Kate. That was actually an 8-year-old Tree and Walker female. So we'll talk about some ages here at the end to do a quick recap. But that's one of the older ones you see that have won the World Championship. And Kate was owned by Marvin Wright and handled by Scott Lindeman.
Yeah. Man, I remember that.
Yeah.
That was like an upset. You know, who else was on that cast?
Viper 2 was a Walker man. I want to say he was he was supposed to win it, wasn't he?
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk about that dog. Then Deepwood's Blister was the other dog that was on the cast.
Blister or Blaster?
Blister. This
Okay,
was
so
Blister.
yeah, that was a little bit of an upset, but she went out there and traded coon. I was on that cast. I can remember that one.
Jim Boyd was the judge. Him, Mike McAvoy, and Larry Brooks. I know Jim was from our part of the country. Jim is about 6'10" or 11 or 13 or whatever.
Yeah.
And hunt with that guy, you know, he'll take one step to your 2 or 3. You know, it's hard to keep up with that guy. One of the fastest guys that you'll hunt with. Old Jim Boyd. Fastest walking guys, I guess.
A bench show winner that year, Cherry Creek Banjo Rig. That was a 4-year-old Tree and Walker male owned by Scott Houston and Trisha Gregg and handled by Trisha Gregg. That's now Trisha Snedeker, right?
Yeah, Cherry Creek Banjo Rick. And the opposite sex winner, there's Kathy Shorter again with Virginia Caroline Mystique.
2000, heading to Columbia City, Indiana again. Another great entry there. Bench show judges Mike Seitz and Frank Pierce that year. And one note I have in here, the largest zone entry in the history of the event up to this point, 733 entries that year into the zones.
Yeah,
Pretty
you
darn
don't.
good.
Dang.
Yeah, you don't have all the field reps on here because I remember Alan Roberts was on there because the part I remember he went out on the final cast and I remember he was giving me a hard time. I forget it was something about how we called it a Coke or a pop maybe or a Coke or he has one or the other. I forget what he made a big deal out of that.
Trevor knows that.
Yeah, you probably call it pop up here. We call it everything Coke down there.
Yeah, everything was a Coke. And he gave me a hard time about that. But yeah.
And yeah, you notice there on that Saturday Night Final cast, there's a familiar name there, Alan Gingrich.
One of the best judges in the country at the time.
We were struggling, man.
We were struggling.
That year.
Hey, you know, that was to me. I remember who was it? Lindell? I think Lindell was. Yeah, Lindell's here. But I remember when he called me in there to and talked about it, and that meant a lot to me. It really did.
Yeah.
You know, I was actually pretty young at that time, and I took it serious, and I was did a lot of hunting at the time and felt confident doing it, you know, and I was really.
Who were the
honored that
co-judges?
Steve Dunn was one of my buddies there.
there you
Steve,
go.
I remember
like him.
Steve and Larry Smith, and yeah, we had that was a good.
Can
hunt.
you
I
remember the cast?
Oh yeah, I remember it. I remember it pretty well.
Yeah.
Rick Meineke guided us. Rick was he worked for like 2 different co-ops that he ran down there.
Oh,
Rick was somebody I hunted with, and I remember one year during kill season I ran or hunted with him most of the time, and he had so much hunting there.
Oh.
Good hunting. He knew all the farmers.
Yeah,
You know,
of
he did all their fields, you know, all the fertilizing and all that good stuff. And I remember that one year we might have hit the same place 2 or 3 times. Just every time it was a different place.
Wow.
Let's go on there, you know. But yeah, I remember that cast very well.
Yeah, the winner that year, and that's talking about 2000 here, was Jimmy D's Handsome Hank. That was a 6-year-old tree and walker male owned by Jeff Duvall and Mike McCumber with Mike handling.
Yeah, I remember Hammer and Earl. Bobby Allen was on the cast. Bobby was actually handling Hammer and Earl, he finished second here. And he did it back to back. He finished second here, and that was a nice dog. He did everything right, and it was a very nice dog. Droop Jr. was Steve Burkholder handling Droop Jr. He was very hot at that time and had been for a while, and a tough fast little dog. Droop Jr. was leading most of the night on this cast, and then there was that Burke's Wild Cry Oscar, which was he won the cast just previous to. I judged him on that cast too, and Oscar won that cast. But Droop Jr. was leading for most of the cast, and we only had 30 minutes left. And I remember we turned in. If action was up to this point, it was a lot of action. And Droop opened there in front of us. Opened right there in front of us. He struck him, and he kind of took off, went out, and comes back in again. You hear a dog, but nothing opened up. And that's the first time I put the time on the dogs. And I remember it was getting down, and Steve Burkholder, he's standing right close to me, and I still remember it today. He's sitting there just spitting.
Seeds?
Just
Or what?
spitting.
Oh,
I mean,
spitting.
he was chewing, I think, and he was just spitting away. He was getting so nerved up. And the time finally eventually got him or whatever. And it wasn't right soon after the Droop had come back, and then he just scooted on out of there.
Huh.
But what I remember about that is after he left, all of a sudden you hear, oh, just right in front of us, maybe 30 yards, old Handsome Hank right there, just falls treed right in front of us, and we scored that coon. The only one and I'm sure that's what Droop smelled right there, and he was curled up sleeping in the crotch, and that's what won it for Handsome Hank, that coon right there.
Oh, jeez.
That was so back and forth throughout that first cast. I remember the very first drop, they went in, I think we had a 2 or 3-way split on the first cut loose. And they were all right close together, and they all had coons. But this was from here. Hank kind of went from almost from last to first tree in that coon right there, and that's what won it for him.
Yeah,
right
Hank had 600, Earl 500, Droop Jr. 425, and Oscar 225. So it was you call that a good hunt? That's a good World Final cast.
Yeah.
Show winner that year was Simmons, Indiana Night Falls Gotcha. That was a young dog, a 1-year-old plot female owned by Lila and Elwood Simmons and handled by Randy Riggs.
Yeah, I remember watching that show too. Watched Randy win that. Yeah, Boss's Little Hoss was the opposite sex winner.
Yep.
Next year, headed up in to Palmyra, Missouri, and this is 2001 now. Another strong entry that year. Are you scanning over your field reps there? Anybody you want to mention in this part here?
Let me see here. Jimmy Phillips, already mentioned him. Dan Harskamp is new that year out of Iowa. Yep, Orange City, Iowa. There you go.
Bench show judges that year: Lee Currens and Lonnie Mears. A couple of legends within the Walker breed there. And I don't know, 2001. You always think about what it must have been like at that time. You're talking about the zones were September 14th and 15th of 2001. Just 3 days prior to that, September 11th, the whole world changed, and that had to be kind of
That was it.
a crazy time to be going or to be putting on major events. You know, I was just young then; I was only 10 or 11 years old, so
Yeah,
kind of hard to think about.
Was this not the year where they had a terrible lightning storm or something in the finals? Do you remember that? I think that was here
This is
in Missouri.
in Missouri.
Gosh, I remember that final cast pretty well. And
Well, I don't think it was the final. Wasn't it the first night on a Thursday night?
That makes sense. Yeah, I think there was.
I think
I know. I remember
like
the final
had a
cast
torrential
because
downpours
Jess
or something.
Dickerson and I got scolded by the judge. I don't remember. He's on the cast obviously, but either he's leading or time's running down or something. We're just chit chatting and laughing and walking along. The judges are like, "Hey,
Pay attention."
I'm supposed to be responsible.
Yeah. You mentioned Jess there. He was handling the world champion that year in 2001. That was X Junior.
Yeah.
X Junior was 4 years old at the time, obviously a tree and walker male. And Jess was a co-owner of the dog with Russ Meyer, and Jess was doing the handling. He had 200 plus, beat out Wooded Swamp Rush, which was an English dog, Double Springs Echo, a Blue Tick, and High Country's Too Tall, who's a tree and walker.
Yeah, and that was that hunt right there. Jess Dickerson was already a big name, obviously, in the coon hunting world. And at that time, he had Nocturnal Nailer, which is a grandson or a grandsire to X Junior, but was off a skipper. But yeah, you look at the pedigree of X Junior. That dog was bred to the hilt. World champion, and yeah,
2 sires at that time, Naylor and Sackett Jr., who were just at their peak in that time. I would assume they're in the early 2000s.
Yep. And then the show winner, Lisa Hunziker. This was that's the year she won the world show with a dog named Red Eagle Diamond Jewel.
She was an owner, handler, breeder. She was a doll.
Yep, there you go. And then there you go, opposite sex winner, Doc Birdsall again. Doc Lyra's tribute to Virginia. Well, he really made those. He had a lot of dogs up there in the.
Sure did.
Oh.
2002, LaGrange, Indiana. That's where we currently have one of our TOC regions. Been hosting events there for a while, and you always talk about how nice the fairgrounds are. I've still never been there, but they hosted the World Championship. I assume there that year.
Yeah, I was just there again a couple of weeks ago. I was down there at the fair. They made some nice improvements there. It's always been a nice fairgrounds, and I got to looking at some of the improvements they made and thinking, man, I'd love to be going back here again. It's a good place.
This year, you actually added a 6th zone, Todd, and it was way over west. Wyoming this first year, but over the next several years, you saw it be in Montana some, Oregon some. This is probably where your top 100 kind of turned into more like a top 102, 103, 104 type thing. And the world champion in 2002 was Rock River Gap. He was a 4-year-old tree and walker male owned by Alan Snedeker and handled by Mike Parrish.
Yeah, I think you were out on that cast, and they talk a lot about this cast.
I've got an asterisk right here on my notes because that was my favorite finals cast I was ever on.
Put on a show, didn't he?
Oh my gosh! And I was trying to think this morning. I can remember a situation where Mike wasn't wanting to cut him loose. I just pulled him off a tree, scored him.
Mike Parrish.
Yeah, and so. I don't know, the other handlers questioned it. No, you got to turn him loose and whatever. He turned that dog loose again. He didn't go 50 yards more and tree another one. And everybody throws their hands up. It's like it was crazy.
It was
he put on a show.
See, Hardwood Henry, which is a name that you still hear from the Fleetwood's Hardwood Henry. Jeff Rickless was in that cast.
Yeah.
And that was a tough dog. Old Henry was a good one.
Burkholder was judging it, if I remember right.
Yep, he was. Marlon Yoder, Burkholder, and Mark Fry were in. Dale Rakestraw, I'm sure you hunted in good places. He always had great places to guide. And Hammer and Earl was in that cast. We just talked about him the year before.
Tough cast, and Gap was young.
Yep, and not just that. Crow and Grant's Cutters, that other one we talked about. Now, I remember that was a good dog, too. That was a good final. And honestly, if you really, name-wise and everything,
he'd have been the underdog.
Gap would have been the underdog in that cast.
Yeah.
But hey, Mike had him ready. Mike's hunting the tar off of him and hunting him for Alan Snedeker and everything. But Crow and Grant's Cutter, one thing I remember about him is that my brother judged him in the first night or what have you. So he comes from out west or whatever, Oklahoma or whatever, and put him in cornfields. I remember Paul was talking about that. Man, he has never seen a dog that in the first hour, there were treeing a bunch of coons on cornfields at the time, and how it just seemed like he wasn't used to that, and how fast he acclimated to that. And by that last hour, he said he just put on a show. He came from behind and just he couldn't do no wrong, and he said he was very impressive.
Do you had the scores on that final cast?
Yeah, we do. But I remember, I think Cutter was only like a year old, barely. I don't think he was barely 2 years old.
I don't have that information.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and I think if I remember right, Henry treed the first coon on the first drop. Did he not?
Well, Henry got declared treed first.
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking, okay, here's how we thought it was going to play out.
Well,
and I don't remember, he didn't score that coon.
Well, I remember we were sitting at the headquarters, and they had the big scorecard again there. And I remember Bobby Allen was sitting there watching the scores, the play-by-play, and Terry Colder and I were there. And I remember Terry told me when Henry treed the first one, he said, he's going to win it, But then that's one thing I remember. The other thing I remember, Bobby Allen sitting there, because I think, doggone, what's his name that handled Henry that year, or Earl that year? What was his name? Oh, gone it. But anyways, Bobby Allen was sitting there, and he would just get up and walk outside, smoke. He must have smoked 3 packs of cigarettes sitting there that night. Every time he couldn't handle watching that play-by-play. I remember that, but yeah, 887.5 is what.
Yeah,
Rock
that
scored.
was a good one, wasn't it?
Yeah, yep.
That might have been the.
Yep. Earl scored 600 and Cutter 412.5, and then Henry ended up getting out of pocket after he scored that first one. He was out of pocket the whole night, wasn't he?
He was.
Yep. Yeah.
Then over on the show side, for the second time in 5 years, we saw Robert and Melanie Hitson win a world championship, this time with Hitson's Blue BJ, who was actually out of the Blue Buck Dog that they won it with previously.
Yeah. Yeah, Gap, going back to Gap there, just his pedigree, obviously goes back to Sackett Jr. and all that pedigree of Frank Giddings stuff. So Hard Knock and Stylish Hayes, Merschel's stuff on the bottom side. But yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I remember that one. Obviously very involved with that one. Hey, that year, you're talking about judges. That year helped with helping them with a bunch of judges, putting the judges together, and that was a job. 26 needed double them up. That was hard. With Eukanuba, stamina is the one difference I'm seeing. When I'm running hair up north, my dogs will put on 10, 12, 15 miles of solid running, and they just don't tire as easily or as quickly. Oftentimes, my work schedule does not allow me to have the desired physical conditioning on my dogs, but even then, as many as 25 or more miles a day of hard running is just another day in the office. To me, it's been apparent Eukanuba's 30-20 sport formula is making that difference. Eukanuba, the official performance dog nutrition partner of UKC.
Then in 2003, right back in LaGrange, Indiana that year, this year, got a list of field reps there again, Alan.
Let me see. Dave Harp's on board already here.
Yep.
I'm not seeing nobody new. Nobody new here. Yeah.
Bench show judges that year.
This was the year Tank was
Okay, he was on staff.
And I remember it was the first year UKC had that big old bus because he parked it down there at the LaGrange Fairgrounds.
Bench show judges that year, Mark Threlfall and Lindell Price. Wasn't Mark as
he was vice president here
of UKC, yeah.
And Lindell,
good confirmation guy.
He was, yep. He headed up our disciplinary action committee here at UKC for a long time. Yep.
This must be the 4th or 5th time Lindell has had the honor of judging the World Finals here.
Yeah.
Let's see. One note. Let's see. Last time. Let's see. Okay. So and the world champion this year in 2003 was Little Wood Scar. That was a 3-year-old tree and walker male owned by Bobby York and Charlie Sumner and handled by Jody Jessup.
Yep. I remember that cast too. I was judging again that year.
Were you?
Yeah, me and Tony Ford.
Man, I remember that cast too.
Yeah.
That was a heartbreaker.
It kind of was. That was you're talking about Jerry Mull's Jenny dog.
Yep.
She had that wrapped up, sewn up, everything, but signing the card. Oh. And you remember when she's sitting on that fence row, and I'm sure that dog probably hadn't left 5 trees in her lifetime. He didn't tree her for a while. And with our rules today, he would have had to tree her, obviously. But the reason he didn't, Dancer was running out in that bean field.
Right, the blue tick.
And I don't know where Scar was at the time, but she ended up leaving, and he did finally tree her, and he took a minus.
I thought he traded her.
He did. He did, and then she
didn't
left.
need to trade her.
Didn't need to tree her. That was it.
He didn't
need
had
to tree her.
He had it won.
Yeah, had it won, was leading. And goes down and trees again on the other side of the bean field and does the same thing.
I bet he's replayed that off.
Oh, I bet too. But she was a nice dog, and Jenny went on to, she was known to be she was the dog to beat there in that cast. And Dancer was, hey, that's a blue tick owned by Ron Taylor. That was that dog was doing a lot of winning at that time too. And honestly, Little Scar, he was probably kind of considered the underdog there.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show that's why we hunt him. But I remember the guide Marlon Yoder. And I don't know if you remember where we hunted, but in today's world, we probably would never hunt there. Just it wasn't that far off of the toll road, probably within a mile and a half of the toll road. But great hunting along the Pigeon River. That's where we hunted. But yeah. The other thing I remember about that cast there, I was saying, old Dean Miller, who he just passed. Dean's a little younger than I. He had cancer, and he just passed here a couple of months ago. He was an Amish guy, but he was a great hunter. Had some good dogs, a good dog trainer, and everything. But he that night, I think Dancer treed on a tree, kind of out by himself, a snag tree that you could probably almost push over. And Dean grabs this big old log stick or whatever, and he starts beating on this tree. And I finally went over and I said, "Dean, Todd Killam's standing right back there. I don't think we should be doing this." He was going to town on this thing, and I thought he was going to knock the dang tree down. But
so just to be clear, both years you judged, you didn't have to get on Todd for talking during the hunt.
I learned my lesson.
I don't think you were. I think Todd Morgan was with us the first time I judged. I think it was Todd.
So how many
Morgan.
times did you judge it?
Twice. Yeah. Littlewood Scar. Fletcher Stylish Jake was that dog's sire. Goes back to the Sackett Jr. stuff there, and then the show winner that year. I remember that dog was a kind of a hunting dog too.
Yeah, I don't know what titles it had at that time in particular, but the dog ended up being national grand champion, world show champion, grand night champion, grand champion, Emmys, Hammerin, Hank, Honest Abe, HTX6.
Yeah, well, at that time he hadn't won Autumn Oaks yet, but he won it like the year after that or soon after that. But that was a dog that they used to hunt. He was a hunting dog and a good-looking sucker, obviously.
I was a three-year-old that year, Tree and Walker Mail owned by Ryan Sears and Natalie Drake at that time, and by Natalie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. He was off of a dog named Hammerin Hank, Gold Dust Hammerin Hank.
Phil Newland's dog.
Yep.
Opposite sex that year was the world show champion from a couple of years previous, the Simmons Indiana Nightfalls Gotcha dog.
Yep, a plot dog.
04 headed to the east again, King, North Carolina this year. Judges that year for the bench show, Dave McCormick and Dale Prunty were on the East Coast, and this was the 20th anniversary of the World Bench Show Championship. 177 bench shows this year. At this time, it's already settled in and became, what the title you're going after. You want to be the world champion in there as well. And I see some the final cast judges there. David Garden, obviously some other familiar names on there. Randy Selby, Johnny Nichols, but David obviously became a field rep not too long after this.
Right.
Obviously.
Yep. All good guys right there.
Man, you remember what I remember about King, North Carolina, when we got pulled in there to the grounds, my heart sunk because that bench show arena was terrible. It was a mess. It was deep sand. There was I remember there was a little Ford 8N tractor in there, and someone got on the tractor. I don't know if it was Bannerman or somebody, and we had to get that place looking good, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
And it came off okay.
Yeah.
Would you go look at the venue before you put a world championship
back
there?
then? We really didn't.
Right. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Just have to go off the word there. But the world champion that year in 2004 in the night hunt was Bates Critical Chuck.
Tom Bates.
That was a 7-year-old Walker female owned and handled by, like you said, Tom Bates.
Yep.
Breeder Joe House.
Yep. Yeah. It was Tom was kind of a well-known hunter, hard hunter. Yep, scored 350 out there, and that had to be a close one. Another dog, I remember that was the year they did a play-by-play again, and I remember watching it or whatever.
Well, I think once we started, we did it every year, right?
Yep, and a dog named Festus, he was just lost by 25 points. So he scored 3 1/4. And then that old South Stylish Lee, which was he ended up with a score of 200 plus. Yeah.
Bench show winner this year, we kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, black and tan male, 4-year-old Shawnee Hills Beaujolais. That was another dog, H.L. Meyer, his second one to win here, with Mike Seats handling his second time winning it with one of H.L.'s black and tans.
Yeah, and he's off of that world champion patent pending dog. But hey, Beaujolais here, if you notice, he's also got the Grand Nite title, you know, and he was off of that patent pending dog that we talked about. That I'm pretty sure placed in the world championship. I think Kevin Phillips handled him that year. Yeah. Yeah, that Beaujolais dog, he won a lot of shows. That was a good looking black and tan right there. And but yeah, and then the opposite sex winner that year was kind of another one like that War Bonnet Tammy dog or whatever, just won everything, but just could not wrap up the world show title. That was Amanda Alexander's Maze Blue Sugar Babe.
Oh,
remember that dog?
Jeez, yeah.
That dog won, just won a lot. That was
she was nice.
She was nice.
2005, Portland, Indiana. And Alan, this is where your first one as an employee of UKC.
It was. You know, I came on in 2004 right after the World Hunt. I guess you guys didn't want me a part of that. So you didn't hire me on until after.
I don't remember your anniversary. Come on.
He thought maybe you judged the final cast for him.
It was right after the World Hunt, basically. So, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's the year I came on, and I was involved with the selection for this one right here, and this would have been my first one.
Yeah, bench show judge there, Alan Kalau, who's a field rep now, still is today, and Miss Lori Mills did the finals. See on the judges there, the final cast: Sean Brotherton, Chad Butcher, and Matt Lingo.
Yeah, you probably know. Well, you know Matt. Chad does Janet. Remember her, Janet Emery? That's her ex-husband. They're good guys right there. Judge the final cast.
Is this the one that was at the music festival grounds?
No, you're thinking that's Tennessee.
Oh,
Rogersville, Tennessee is what you're thinking. This is down in Portland, Indiana.
Oh,
yep.
And this year is notable because this year the world champion was the youngest in the history of the event still today at 17 months old. The winner was Bolden and Turpin's Insane Jane, 17-month-old female, Tree and Walker, owned by Tim Bolden and James Turpin, handled by Tim Bolden, won this cast with 2 1/4.
Yeah, you know, you remember a lot of your firsts, and this was a big deal for me, you know, being my first one that I was kind of involved with. And I remember the big thing for me that year was that I was so worried about was doing the dang interview.
Oh.
And I remember Kevin Phillips handling Doc. You know how Kevin gets. He gets all nerved up. He's sitting at the table, and his knee is just bouncing up and down. He's so nervous, and he's making me nervous because he's nervous. Then we've got a young kid, a 16-year-old, Austin Sigmund from North Carolina. He's handling the stylish yoke dog, and I can't barely get anything out of him. And then stylish Jet, Jess Dickerson's partner out there out west, Myers, no, not West. What's his name? Russ Myers was handling Jet. And honestly, Russ kind of bailed me out. He's well spoken, you know. Yeah. I say bailed me out. He was, and then Insane Jane, you know, was at that Tim Bolden. You know, he was just a pup too. So I had 2 young guys, and that was tough for me.
Did you go on that cast?
I went on that cast, and I remember where we first turned loose, cut them loose along this little creek or whatever, and Jane and Doc went in there and just Jane slammed a coon right there, not probably 40 yards inside the woods there, just slammed one, and Doc went on around, and I don't know, it was kind of a little bit of a messed up deal where Doc had I don't know if they got turned around or what have you, but there was Austin Sigmund should have probably questioned that because there was we were sitting out at the roads, and it looked a little different than, I don't know, might have got turned around, but that was kind of a big deal to me that year. Jet was a good dog. He looked good, but they all looked pretty good. We had a good hunt there, but Jane was, her score didn't really reflect it there so much but she was tough, man. For a 17, at that time, I don't think she knew how to screw up.
Yeah.
That's true. Bench show winner that year was Only in America. That was a 4-year-old redbone male owned by Dale and Laurie Young, and the handler was Dale.
Yeah, I was happy for him. They supported the shows so well over the years.
Yep, and County Line Liberty Bell, the plot was the opposite sex winner for Christina Farthing. That's one of her dogs.
2006 went to Springfield, Tennessee.
There we go.
Good entry that year. Bench show judges Marshall Pike and Lonnie Mears. And this year expanded it to 8 zones. And this would have been the first time that the number of dogs advancing from each zone, it wasn't 20 per zone. It was based on the number of entries in each zone compared to the overall number. So the same percentage from each zone was able to move on. So that's probably one of the first things that you...
Yeah, it was probably one of the first things that the changes that I made. That I don't know. Hey, it worked. Love it. It worked, and it was kind of
the most fair way to do it.
It was, Trevor, you and I talked about it on a different podcast. I think maybe in the World Championship preview here, you and I talked about this a little bit, but it was the whole concept of taking 20 dogs out of each of the 5 zones to make a top 100. That's a great concept. 20 dogs are the best of each region. But I remember the year that you guys had it in there was a zone in Bellevue, Michigan, 45 minutes from my house.
Yep.
But I had to drive 8-9 hours to Marshalltown, Iowa. And that, and we had 200 and some dogs. And I remember in Arkansas or someplace that year, they had like 60 dogs, and they sent 20 on, and we sent 20 out of 200 entries. Yeah. And that played pretty hard on me.
Yeah,
there was a lot of grumbling, so I don't know. So this was one of the first things, and you know what? We prorated the entries, and it has worked. And that's what we've had ever since. But, yeah.
I don't know if this is true or not. It may have just been the first time it was mentioned in the recap article, but you mentioned the play-by-play on the forums and how many people you had on there. Would it have been on the forums before then? Do you know? Probably.
I don't think it was. I think that was the first year we had it on the forums. I think before we just had it at the fairground or they just did it on the
first year that you said we had the website up, we would have done it on the forum.
I don't think.
No,
I don't think you did. I think this was the first year
we did it a lot of years on the forum because remember I'd have trivia. I'd have trivia contests. It was kind of fun.
You'd sit at the hotel.
Yeah.
Have your beverage there, and I'd call it into you.
Yeah.
Hey, those were the years when like you're out on the cast a lot of times now, but back there, Kellum would have his drink, and I'd put the stuff back. It wasn't until
one of these upcoming ones when you really put the screws to me. Then I quit going.
Yeah, we'll talk about that's coming up. I came in and kind of I went on all the final casts for a while.
Yeah,
that lasted for about 8 or 10 years, and I pulled one on him.
One notable thing about this final cast in 2006 in Springfield is it was all comprised of 4 females. So I thought that was kind of interesting and kind of diverse. You had, I'll just tell you the world champion right now. That was Split Creek History Quick. That was a 6-year-old tree and walker female owned by Dennis and Todd Felderman and handled by Todd. The tree and walker of 450 plus. Insane Jane came back to try to defend her title. Had 400 plus. Davis's White River Sailing Sadie was a blue tick female, 75 plus. Then there was even a red bone in there, Fireball's Jackpot Jackie.
Yeah, Mike Wright handled that dog, and hey, this was now my 2nd year, and I'm still worried about this dang interview. That was my biggest concern leading up to the whole thing. Putting on the hunt and doing all that stuff, it's the dang interview. But, I guess just being green. But here's Russ Meyer in the cast again. This time now they own Jane, Insane Jane at this. He and Jess Dickerson own Jane now, and he's handling her. And that guy, again, bailed me out on the interview thing. I asked him to be my first one, and he really kind of calmed me down. And probably if you'd ask him, he'd probably say, yeah, I knew that young chap was in bad shape.
Was Van de Venner not a talker back then yet?
He was.
Not so much. I remember Mike Wright, he kind of criticized me. Hey, you didn't ask me very many questions, but... I don't know.
You kind of get lost.
Yeah, but the Feldermans, man, that quick dog, she looked good that night. But so did Jane, and those two, they were neck and neck the whole hunt, and both those dogs looked good. And Jane came dang close to.
Who was handling Jane?
Russ Myers. Yep. And man, what I remember, took some photos there or whatever, and there's one that made the magazine or whatever, but. Man, Russ Meyer, he was just a great guy.
Yeah.
well spoken and just a
Do you
professional.
know
guy.
they had close ties to Albert Pujols?
Yeah,
Like
yep,
he
yep,
lived
did.
with
Yep,
him.
yeah,
I think.
Really?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Well, but yeah, a good hunt right there.
Bench show world champion that year was Hill's Little Gold Nugget. That was a 5-year-old English male, owned again by Don and Vicky Hill, handled by Don.
Yep,
They won their second.
yep. There you go. And there's May's Blue Sugar Babe was once again the opposite sex winner in
Jeez.
that show. We had that. Remember that facility that we had? It was kind of a what was that? Some kind of a
Music festivals.
No, that was in Rogersville. This was in Springfield.
Oh, that was an armory.
Our armory, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's right. I'm getting
armory.
confused on that.
Yep. Hey, we talk about learning things, through experience. And this one thing I learned about this one is you don't advertise anything until you've signed all your agreements. And I'll leave it at that. But I learned that from this event right here. Cost UKC a little bit of extra money. Quite a bit, actually.
2007.
I haven't forgot, Todd.
2007 World Championship was in Angola, Indiana. Looks like this year the bench show judges Chris Waller and Mark Threlfall again. Or Mark again, this time doing the finals. And this was the 30th anniversary of the World Championship. Don't have exact numbers, but it looks like over 5,000 dogs were entered in the RQEs this year. And now we've gone from 6 pages in the Coonhound Bloodlines to 22 to 30-some. So now we're at 49 pages in the World Championship spread in Coonhound Bloodlines.
Yeah.
Man.
You guys must have wrote some long articles.
A lot of photos.
Yeah, a lot to talk about.
Angola, Indiana. I've never been there, but I'm assuming that it must be coon country because over the 3-day weekend, 58 of the 60 casts came back with a plus point cast winner. Pretty good.
It was a good place, and we treated some coons that weekend for sure. I remember that well. Final cast, we had Steve Burkholder and Shane Groves judge that final cast, and that was a good hunt again. I mean, the whole weekend was treat a lot of coons that were over there. Beller's Janice Joplin, Marv Schmucker handling that Russell Beller dog right there, and she put on a show that night, 800 plus. I remember Beller's Gabby was another female that I think she won the AKC World maybe that year or something. That dog was winning a lot. So you had Brian Whitted was in the cast handling Gabby.
Yep.
Yeah, there's 2 Beller dogs in there, her and Janice. I remember he struck Gabby. He miscalled her. He struck the wrong one. I remember the one thing that the judge Steve Burkholder wasted no time minus in that dog. And that kind of set the tone that night. Hey, you ain't getting away with nothing.
Yeah.
And another one was Rocky Run Bad News Bo, the English dog. And, in today's world, and this time, a lot of the hunters, more so, everybody's driving nice trucks and everything except for Terry here with the bow. But I remember I followed him. He didn't have a tailgate on his truck. He's one of those, it might have kind of been a flatbed type of thing, or it might have just not had a tailgate, an old truck. I remember following him all the way to the woods, and I thought, man, there's a coon hunter right there.
Yeah.
And then a dog named Rats.
That might have
Rats
just been
Molly
his hunting truck.
Yeah, well, it was a nice hunting truck. I like that hunting truck. I don't know why I remember that, but I did. But yeah, Janice put on a show that night.
Yeah, Rats
Won the
Molly.
world.
Handler there, Mike Palmer down from in my country.
Yeah, there you go,
Known as
Tennessee.
a good dog man in my country.
Absolutely.
800 plus, 700 plus, 550 plus, 475 plus.
It was a good hunt.
Good hunt there.
Yep.
Let's see. World Show champion that year was another one here. Doc Layer's Tribute to 3 Kings. That was a 3-year-old black and tan male owned by David Doc Birdsall and handled by Kathy Shorter.
Yeah.
Again.
Yep. Then Rose Hilltop Tammy was the opposite sex winner that one. That was a nice little dog too.
Here we are, 2008, Elizabeth, Illinois, and I don't know what kind of hunting terrain is Elizabeth, Illinois.
Well, hey, here's first of all 2 new field reps we got on board here. Wendell Bond was one of them that pops up first time here. Tim Gilchrist from Iowa, he was now on, and I think you guys hired him the year that I started. I didn't actually hire Tim, but he was already on then. David Garden is one of the first ones I hired, and then also Doug Cundiff. Charlie retired, and we hired Doug, and then Wayne Seam out of Minnesota, maybe.
Minnesota, that sounds right.
Minnesota, yeah. So, but yeah, I had went just a quick little story. I had went to go check out this facility over in Elizabeth, Illinois. Met with the club over there, Mark Houck, and everybody. Great area to hunt. Got a lot of, but it's pretty rolling, and it gets up and down a little bit. But anyways, I remember a week or two before the before the hunt, Todd said, "Hey, you've been on these final casts for a while now. Would you mind if I said, "Not a problem."
I hadn't seen it yet.
I know
This was all done before we even got there.
And so I'm going to do the play-by-play from the hotel room, and I'm going to be. I remember Todd and Tanya Rab and I got on the other side of Chicago. We're headed west over towards Elizabeth, and we keep driving, and it kind of starts going up and down a little bit more, and it starts really going up and down. We get close, and I remember Todd turned around. He said, "You son of a."
Too late then. Huh? You were already
ended
committed.
up being that kind of a hunt too. We were hiking.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I had to laugh. I had to laugh.
For sure. Ben Show judged that year. Jeff Coons over in West Virginia, and then Doc Birdsall judged it this year after doing so well in it the past few years. Again, even you're talking about rolling hills and maybe some tougher hunting terrain over the entire weekend, only 2 dead casts again. So great job by the host club there. Final cast judges that year, Jeff Nelson and Dwayne Eisman, with Mark Houck being the guide, as you said there. And the world champion in 2008 was Rocky Creek Jess. That was a 3-year-old English female owned and handled by Rob Wallen.
Yep.
587
around the Shelbyville.
What was his
area.
dad's name?
Oh, I forget what his.
They were always together at the hunts.
Yeah, good guy too.
Yeah,
good guy, and she was probably kind of an underdog there, but I remember here's the doggone interview. One thing we did different, we did it outside. We had the first year we kind of had them back their trucks up and kind of in a circle. Smoky Mountain Hannah was a good gyp. What was his name that handled her from over in West Virginia? Doggone it! I wish would have wrote that down. I feel bad about that. Very nice gyp, a very very well spoken guy. And then Seth Ish with Old Pearl. Pearl was a nice, consistent coon tree right there. And I would say Pearl was probably the one to beat in that cast. And then Ron Taylor again with that Northern Blue Sun dog. I remember, I don't know why, but that dog would hump my leg. Do you remember that? That sucker, he was a big dog, and he latched onto me doing the going from truck to truck, doing the interviews on the tailgates. That dog latched onto me, and I couldn't get rid of that sucker. And I don't know why Ron didn't just keep him away from me or whatever, but every time, it was like, God.
He could tell you're anxious. He thought you were vulnerable, trying to take advantage of you.
I was like, damn, dude.
Yeah, it looks like a good hunt there. But man, we've been talking about a lot of these final casts. A lot of blue ticks mentioned here. They just can't seem to get that dang monkey off their back as many chances as they've had.
Yep. So we got some in the finals there a bunch of times, and Ron's had a couple in the finals. Yeah.
Ben Show World Champion this year was another dog that ended up winning both Autumn Oaks and the World Show Champion. That's Diamond Ridge, Queen of Diamonds.
Yeah, man, a good gyp. Let me tell you a little story about that dog. She wasn't just a nice looking dog.
Whose dog was it?
Vera Bergbauer was.
Oh yeah,
yeah. One time at Bellevue, they have water races and stuff like, or field trials. Field trials are at Bellevue Club. Cut her loose, or she was in one of her heats. She didn't come through there. She's off, and she treed one in the daytime.
Good for her.
Yeah, it's like, there you go. Yep. And the opposite sex winner that year, Cottle's Black Monday, a plot hound. I think that was a plot hound. Yep.
Next year there, 2009, Rogersville, Tennessee, were you guys arguing over who got to go on that final cast?
Here's your music festival place. Remember the little guy?
The thing I remember about that, it was a beautiful place.
Oh, beautiful place.
We tore it up, man. Remember how
it rained so much.
We got so much rain.
Yep.
We're not in gravel parking lots, really. We're parking in these nice grassy areas. They're beautiful, and it was just
open pavilion building kind of set up on the hill. Remember, it had a stage, and this guy had those rocking chairs up there. The breeze coming through there. It was just but it had some torrential downpours.
Yeah, we rutted that place up.
Yeah, and it was too bad. But yeah, that year we had let me see, LB Neat was from Kentucky. Yeah, LB was came on that year and had him over there. And there's Dan Harskamp was out there as well. But yeah.
Ben Show judges that year, Janet Davidson Butcher, now Janet Emery, and Gene Allhands.
Yep.
Judging the final cast there, David Fleming, Randy Stedman, and Lewis Linkus.
Yep.
And guide was James DeBoard. And the world champion in 2010 was Miami River Big D. That was an 8-year-old tree and walker male owned by Russ Beller and Randall Myers and handled by Brian Whitted.
Yeah, they're old Big D, a big old white dog, and he was, I remember Terry Colder used to hunt him some, and That dog did a lot of winning. He was, and you see that dog in a lot of pedigrees today.
350 plus that night.
Yep. Showdown Rock was another walker out of Ohio. I want to say that he looked pretty good that night too. And it came down to actually Rock had made the last tree, and if he would have had a coon, if we would have found a coon in there, that was going to be the difference in winning or losing right there. And then Shelton's Hammer was a dog out of your area,
just
there.
around Loudon, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So you're talking about an hour and a half from
Yep.
there. So
Yep, that was a nice dog. And then another dog out of New York, Clear Creek Cara. And you'll see a withdrawal on here. And I am not sure why. I always wondered why they withdrew in the World Finals. It could have placed third, I thought, like that night. You know, but and a nice jip too. But yeah, that's the first time I've smelled a
Copperhead.
Copperhead. Smelled like cucumbers.
Yeah.
And somebody mentioned that, I'm like, oh man, get me out of here.
You start smelling cucumbers everywhere if you're thinking that.
Yeah, but hey, the other thing I remember about that place is that the guy that owned that place, remember, he was just smiling the whole time and just loved that. But anyways, I think it was Saturday. I think just before the finals, I don't know, after the bench show or what have you. We had the new UKC, that Silver Bullet, we called that little Jetstream van or whatever. That, remember that?
Yeah,
one?
what was that?
That was its first trip, I think.
Okay.
So we're out there in the open pavilion building, and somebody yells at me and says, "Hey, your van's smoking. Your van's on fire or something." I run out there, and I had made me a sandwich out there, so it was kind of a recreational vehicle. You know, it had a microwave in it and everything. And I had made me a sandwich earlier. Get out there, and that microwave is smoking. It is like on fire smoking. And what had happened, it's the microwave is kind of at knee level, and it still had we hadn't used it yet. It had all the styrofoam inside of it. And I guess when I made my sandwich, I bumped the starting thing, turned it on with my knee, and that thing had heated up, was turned on. I was like, lucky it didn't burn the whole car down.
World show champion that year.
Wayne Cavanaugh was there.
Yeah, I was going to ask if he was there.
He was.
He probably wasn't happy.
You know, I'm sure. He just bought it like a week or two before that. I'm trying to burn it down.
Yeah,
I didn't tell you the story where we also had a new car there at my first world championship there at Portland. I remember before we going out with, I remember I had the Sequoia. Remember when we got the Sequoia?
Yeah.
So we had just got it, and I've got some field reps in the car ready to go on the final cast. And I back up, and they've got a trash barrel on the side there, a metal one. I don't see it. And I turn, you know, and I slam right in. Wayne Cavanaugh standing right in the doorway. And here I put a dent in the side of that thing.
Todd, you sure about this guy?
Oh, man.
Good times.
I'm still here.
A bench show winner that year was actually another one here. Won the World Show Championship and Automos as well. This is Dry Creek Misdemeanors Little Felony. She was a 5-year-old black and tan female that year. Doug Bradford, owner. Amber Bradford was the handler.
Yep. Amber just judged our winter class. Was it last year? This last winter class?
This year, 2024.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. That was a nice little, just a little, kind of a small, compact little black and tan female. But yep. Sidearm Jungle King Mufasa was a redbone male that won opposite sex for Lori Mills. 2009.
And next year, 2010, back to Columbia City, Indiana here. Let's see, good year, 716, 900 entries, 158 bench show entries. Good group of field reps here, it looks like. At least one new name I see here, Rock Johnson.
Yeah, he was out of Georgia. Yep, he was a new field rep that year.
Bench show judges that year, Mark Houck and Dan Shaw. And again, only 2 dead casts over the whole weekend. So we're talking about this 3 years in a row now. So I've made a little note here. Is this becoming a trend? Is it location selection, or are the dogs right now starting to see something in the dogs at this time? Who knows? But just a trend. It's hard to quantify it. But the final cast judges that year, Jeff Cole and Saul Hall.
Yep, Saul Hall. He just recently passed away here a couple of years ago, and was younger than me, and had ended up with cancer. But Jeff Cole, you know Jeff, Blake Barkman, and not Blake, but doggone it, what's his name? We use him to judge
Lucas.
all the Lucas
Lucas
Parkman, yep. So he and Saul judged that final cast.
And what a final cast it was here. I see a lot of plus points here over all these dogs here. I may let Alan run through that if he was on his final cast, but the world champion that year was House's Mr. Clean. That was a 5-year-old tree and walker male. Benny Phipps was the owner, and Don Dunlap was the handler. 1,075 plus.
Yeah, Mr. Clean just looked good that whole year. Even the year before, he was in the finals. I want to say the year before, but he was kind of he was kind of out there as the dog to beat. Comes back in this year and he dominated basically, And I remember he wasn't the first. We had, I think, 2 or 3 dogs treed the first drop. And by the time we got them scored, he's treed somewhere and he's got a coon. He didn't miss that night, but that's just the way it went the whole night. Didn't miss. And even with this 1075, he's sitting there on the last tree or two and he's letting other dogs take trees. And that's how much he dominated this cast. And to say dominate, I remember this night, this hardwood tiny, a female, tree walker female, that Jip looked good too. And I really thought it was a shame that the way that little female looked, how she got shattered over, Mr. Clean that night. But yeah, I think that's the first year we say the first and only year for a dog to break 1,000. Yeah, and he did it quite easily. Yeah. Looked good doing it.
Cutter's double deuce 775, Kentucky hardwood tiny 650 plus, Sherman's Gabby 375 plus. Would have liked to have been along on that one.
Yep.
Clean, you talked about him being a favorite here already, and then he went on to win Autumn Oaks in 2011 and 2014. So what a career for that dog! That's he'll probably go down as one of the best dogs in the history of this company.
Yeah, he was a nice one for sure.
Bench show winner that year, Rockin' W's Ben Barhoppen. That was a 2-year-old blue tick male owned by Jody Bray and Whitney Killo, and Whitney was the handler and also the breeder.
Yeah, that is the first year I ever met Whitney, and it's like they were new to the sport, and here they come and you could tell they were green as grass, kind of didn't know a whole lot, or we certainly didn't know who they were, and they come and win the world show, and it was the start of it.
Was that dog before or after her cowboy dog? Because she won a lot with cowboy, and I think
this was before.
I would have guessed he was after, but
I think this was before.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, yeah. And it was some of Amy's Razor Ridge stuff is what it was off of. Yeah, it is. Melrose Mountain Amazing Grace, Lisa Bedingfield's dog won the opposite sex that year. Yep.
First of 3 times she's actually the opposite sex.
Yep. 2010.
2011, the World Championship went to Wooster, Ohio. And this is now the largest zone entry that I've ever seen in any of the magazines or everything. 776 night hunt entries that year. And also 193 bench show entries to go along with it.
Yep.
Pretty darn good.
Very good, yep. And speaking of bench show, Bonnie Roundtree from Canada.
Oh, yeah.
I always liked Bonnie. I remember I apprenticed under her, and I just learned so much from her and always respected her.
Good judge.
And she's always done a good job for us. She judged there. And Dale Prunny was the final round judge that year. Yep. Wooster, Ohio.
And the world champion that year was Wilcox's Thunder Top Gun. 4-year-old English male, owned and handled by Larry Wilcox, or LL Wilcox. I'm not sure which one he went by at the time. But
Larry, yeah.
625 plus he had, and it looked like it was a pretty darn good hunt. Another English dog here, Cal's Big River Jesse Lee, 425 plus. Lone Pine Track Girl, 375 plus, and little Hissy Fit.
Yep, Hissy Fit there, she shows to be scratched, and she was just young. I don't think she was even 2 years old. She had put on a show leading up to that point and ended up treeing a possum. She split treed right close to one of the other dogs and had a possum. Gosh, I felt bad for him. That was, I think, on the first drop, and had to send him back, and that left us with a three dog cast there. But I remember Track Girl. She ended up third there, but she was an impressive walker female, big old mouth, big dog, one of Randy Smith's dogs. She looked good. Jessie Lee looked good, the English dog, Call's dog, but yeah, Top Gun. One thing I always remember about Top Gun, I thought he treed him took a first tree on that very last tree that he did not need at all. And in the World Finals, I thought, man, the only thing that could get him beat is treeing his dog here. And it being, that's the only thing that could get him beat.
We just talked about that.
And he's like, well, I know he's, and I get it, but Not all handlers would have treated. I always remember that. But yeah, Top Gun looked good, and you know what? Ever since then, there's a dog that is he's in a lot of English dogs pedigrees now too.
Was that the dog that Larry brought out to our company
was,
coon hunt?
Yep.
We used to hold a company coon hunt at my house where we could turn loose right behind the house.
Yep.
And we always had a guest come in there and bring a big name dog. Asa Briggs, I remember he brought one in.
Yep.
That is cool.
Yeah, but we got to see that dog tree some coons.
Yeah. Top Gun was off of Tybo and all of Larry's stock there. But yep.
Years and years of breeding led them to a world championship.
Yep. And then now this was also the third time a Redbone wins the world show.
This year, Wabash River Thunder's Storm, 3-year-old Redbone male, owned and handled and bred by Andy Elburn, now Andy Emery.
Yep. I remember that show very well. And then Melinda Hicks won the opposite sex with a dog she called Troubles back in town.
A couple of young gals that year.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were.
2012 made the decision to go down to Shreveport, Louisiana. Talk any about that decision?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? The part of that came in. We already knew at this point that we were going to take the Winter Classic over to Batesville. And this was also kind of tied it in a little bit. And, we hadn't announced it yet that the Winter Classic was going to go over there, but we kind of knew we had been working on it and went to Shreveport. And, remember the folks down there, they went, the Chamber of Commerce, they went out of their way to support us, wanted us to be there, and
wasn't that a church?
It was
related
a church type
grounds?
kind of a cowboy church type of facility. Nice facility.
Yeah, it was
really, really nice facility, and our entries that year, I remember our QE entries kind of took a hit that year, but it ended up being a great place. We got lucky. It was hot, but I remember the facility. What kind of trees were those? Do you remember those? They were like what do you call those with remember at Albany when you pull in there, what are those trees when you pull into the Albany Fairgrounds? Is it live oaks or what? Not live oaks or what?
That's a popular. I don't remember what was on those grounds, but
man, it felt good. We got lucky on the weather that weekend for sure. But
yeah, Shreveport, Louisiana, a bunch of reps here. I think you've actually David Hankel. Had you mentioned him?
No, he was from. Let me see. David was from Mississippi, I think. David Hankel, but he was only on for a year or two. I think a job or something kind of kept him from. Yeah, but yeah, he would have been there.
Yeah, a couple well-known bench show judges this year, Doc Birdsall and Johnny Brinkley.
Yeah,
and I actually made a note here. The very first Coonhound bloodlines that I ever remember receiving was this World Championship issue with Rick Stretch, Brian Whitted, and Jody Jessup on the front.
Yeah. I remember Johnny Brinkley judging the show. You know how Johnny always likes to dress up and everything. He wore a suit and tie and everything and a John Deere hat.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Final cast judged by Terry Baker and Casey Dooley that year. Guide was Kevin Bynog. And the winner was, after an overtime period, was Hannah's Creek Feelin' Frisky. It was a 4-year-old Trent Walker female owned by Jody Jessup and Brian Whitted and handled by Rick Stretch.
Yeah, that was quite a final cast there. We kind of struggled. You know, that Hot Rod Lincoln dog right there, he was kind of the one to beat there and a good hound. He was one of the locals there, but hey, that's why we hunt him too. But I remember in the overtime, they treed Ace's dog, which was the witch dog. She went in there, treed first, and another one treed. We had like 3 or 4 split trees right there in a row and go down the line. And it's like every dog was still in it at this point. It was strange. First one, we can't find the coon. It gets circled. Might have got minused, actually. I forget now, but go all the way down to the last one, and Frisky's got the coon to beat them all. And she went basically from last to first doing that. But yeah, you talk about sometimes on final cast you see emotions and this and that, and even just when it came down to that, I remember Rick over there, and yeah, it was an emotional night for him to win that thing for sure. There was Frisky had won Autumn Oaks, and I forget if it was before that or after that, probably before that, but yeah. Memorable.
She won it in 10, so
yeah,
it would have been before that.
Battlewood Joe Brown was her sire.
One cool
Terry Vance's dog.
you've been talking about putting on the interviews a little bit. And I remember reading the interviews from here, and I want to I think it was just a younger guy handling the Scudder dog. And you probably don't remember it, but I think he said it was one of his first casts he'd ever been to, and here he is he hadn't been hunting very long, and I just remember thinking, man, that was the World Finals you can be somebody like Rick Stretch and Asa Briggs who have been handling dogs for 30 plus years, or you could have just been in for a year or two and just get hot at the right time. And that people should know that,
Yep.
Winners come in all shapes and sizes here. So.
Yep.
Bench show winner that year was Red Eagle Coming to Your City, a 6-year-old tree and walker male, owned, handled, bred by Lisa Hunziker. Second time she had done that. Did it back in 2001, now in 2012.
Yep. Good looking hound too. That dog won a lot of shows. A lot of dogs off him came up behind him and are winning as well. There's Melrose Mountain Jezebel Jet, again winning opposite sex there.
2013, you were up in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Again, a good number there. You talk about moving it from Louisiana to E-Town. You go from 550 entries to 677 entries there in the hunt that year. Bench show judges that year, Amy Smith and Beth Snedeker. And judging your final cast, Sean Johnson and Billy Joe Yoakum. Billy a little bit still a guy in the clubs today. And the winner that year was Main Street John the Baptist, 5-year-old English male owned by Kerry Rooks and handled by Randy Leonard. He won his world championship that year, didn't he?
Yep, that was they struggle a little bit, as you can see there by the I remember Annie Booger Holler, or Annie was a tough little female right
Alvis
there.
Kaufman.
Alvis Kaufman, and she ended up training a possum on that night.
Yep.
That's what got her scratched out of the cast. Main Street Ruby, there's Asa Briggs again, 2 years in a row, placing second at the World Championship. Ruby was a real coon trayer.
Yeah.
But she was probably the one to beat here. But I remember this English dog won it, and after they came back in or whatever, I told the handler, hey, he hunted a lot of PKC, and came in, and I told him, I said, man, I don't have $10,000 to give you here, but I've got this and this and this. But I remember very well what he told me, and we talked about the prestige of the world hunt, and I remember very clearly he said, son, you don't have to give me a dang thing. I've been trying to win this hunt for 32 years.
Yeah.
And I said, I could go home and I have got everything I need. And that always stuck with me.
Yeah.
Yep. Randy Leonard, he's the one that told me that, so 32 years somebody trying to win a hunt like that.
I don't know.
You could just tell what it meant to that guy.
Yeah.
With nothing. Go home and he was satisfied with absolutely nothing.
And that year, after Andy went out, you had 2 Englishes duking it out, and actually they're guaranteed then to win their 3rd world championship in the past 6 years.
Yeah,
so
Main Street Roy was a big name, and that's what John the Baptist was off of, or what have you, and that's a lot of Ace's dogs go to all that Main Street stuff, but all that Main Street stuff is off of old Roy, basically.
You go cat hunting with Ace's son. Does he use the Main Street stuff there on the cats too, or is it different strain of
I want to say he, when I was with him, he was running a couple blue dogs.
Oh, gotcha.
That he got from maybe some of Jim Wales stock or something.
Yeah. World show champion that year was Kentucky Mountain Cinderella Girl. That was a 5-year-old English female owned by Penny and Jody Jessup, and now it's Penny Turner and handled by Penny Turner.
Yep, and the opposite sex was a plot hound male, Suncrest, standing on the promise.
Fast forward to the next year, 2014, Mount Pillier, Ohio. See a new name there, Benny Bowles. Down in Texas, right?
Yeah, a good guy, great guy.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him much here in the last 5 or 6 years. He's been struggling with health issues, and hope he's doing well. I need to call him more than I do, but Benny was a great guy. But yeah, this is one of his first ones he worked here.
30th World Bench Show Championship at this point in 2014, and the judges this year, Tony Ford and Alan Kalau. A couple of good ones there.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like I keep saying this, a little redundant. 2 dead casts over the 3-day weekend there in Montpelier, Ohio. Dogs are doing good. Guides are doing good, putting them in the right places. Final cast judges that year, Seth Ish and Dale Rakestraw. The guide was Shane Liskowyak.
Yep, you got it. That's Liskowyak. That's how you pronounce it. Hey, good hunting again. And it was just a tough hunt. The dogs really got scattered out there. And I remember Corey Groover was out he was working for us.
Who's on the cast?
He was on the cast here, and I was doing so it was
dog?
Keegan's Letting Loose Lila, Gerald Keegan. She ended up winning it.
Yep.
And then there was also a blue tick named Getting Geiner, I guess was his name. Getting Geiner or something. Stylish Amazing Grace, and then a stylish Hardwood Loco. So 3 walkers and a blue tick here again.
Another blue tick knocking on the door there.
Yeah, but letting loose Lila made want it, and
just a young dog. They only 2 years old at the time.
She was. Hey, one thing I'll say about this, that it was the first time I've seen it. Gerald Keegan pulls horses. He's a horse puller, big name in the horse pulling industry, and I didn't really know him. First time I kind of met him, he was kind of local there. So the hunt was over here at Montpelier, so he was kind of one of the local. He was only 45 minutes from there. When they came, Steve Burkholder did the final cast interview, and they had to kind of wait on him a little bit. Gerald Keegan, he comes in there in his coveralls, and it's kind of the guy he is. He went home and baled hay that day on the Saturday before he wins the world championship. He was baling hay.
Jeez,
gotta get to work,
man. Who does that? That got work to do. That's right,
Gerald for you.
Yeah,
world show champion that year was. Well, here's the first time I've seen this title on here. I'll just say World Show Champion, Night Champion, Confirmation Champion, Grand Champion, Hall of Fame, Kentucky Mountain Diamond Cutter.
Mm-hmm.
That was a 3-year-old English male, and then it was a back-to-back winner. Penny Turner, Jody Jessup were the owners. Penny Turner is the handler there.
Yep, and Andy Emery won the opposite sex with the Redbone Wabash River Hail on Heels. 2014.
Next year, 2015, going back to the heartland, Flora, Illinois, Charlie Brown Park. Back there to crown.
You know what I still remember about that? We did such a terrible job with hanging our banners. We're all crooked hanging above the bleachers there. I still remember that.
Learn from your mistakes, right?
That's
some facilities just aren't set up for it.
And
it makes
that
it
one
tough.
really for that. It didn't have a good, but it is just like I remember about Saturday. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, oh gosh, I hope
looks
Wayne
terrible.
doesn't.
They built that place for Black and Tan days, I think.
Yeah,
just specific for that.
Yep.
Let's see, Amber Carroll, bench show judge that year, Chris Waller. And I made a note here. This look through all the entries every year. 194 in the bench show that year. That's the largest show I've ever seen at the Coonhound World Championship.
Yep, it was. Yep.
And another note on the show, an American Leopard Hound won it. First time ever. They were included as the 7th Coonhound breed just 7 years prior to that, and they won the world show here.
Yep. 2
dead casts over the entire weekend. That's a trend now. I would have to go back and look at the numbers, but really impressive. And the winner that year, East Steps Bean Creek Pepper, 6-year-old Tree and Walker female, owned by Lou and Ryan Eastep and handled by Lane Eastep.
Yeah, that was quite a cast there. You probably don't remember it, Trevor or Todd, but Paul Frederick judged it. He and one of the locals there named Irvin Hostetler. But there was 2 black and tans in the cast. Solo, Bad Company riding Solo, and Big Slick, Eads Big Slick. Slick was leading the cast, and Little Shining Star was a little Walker female. I think all 3 of those treed together. I think at least, or 2 of them treed together. Slick ended up on a possum at the end of the hunt. Treed a possum, and was winning. Knocked him right out. I think all 3 of them were on that tree.
Gee.
Don't hold me to it, but he went from winning to losing, and in the meantime, we're down at the very end of the hunt. Pepper is treed, and I think hunt time runs out, and she's got a coon.
Jeez.
The way
kind of another one that went from last to first, and because of this misfortune.
Wow.
Kind of read the
Bad deal.
play-by-play. Makes you kind of seem like Solo and Star are here, and as the cast is going in, Slick comes in right before the cast gets there. So matter of a minute, it changes the.
That's right. That's the way. I don't think he even got treed. Yeah, I don't think he was declared treed. I think the tree was already closed. He went at something like that. It was kind of a bad deal.
Bench show world champion, like I said, 5-year-old American Leopard Hound male named Elburn's Indigo. Curtis Elburn and Adina Livingston were the owners, and Adina was the handler that year.
Yep, and here again you have this opposite sex winner, Andy Emery with Wabash River Hail on Heels. Again, the opposite sex winner.
That was a win-win for Curtis.
Yeah.
Either his dog or his daughter.
2015.
Next year, went back to Greencastle, Indiana, 2016. Mitchell judges Tim Hickman and Steve Fielder that year. A couple plot guys. Again, 2 dead casts over the entire weekend. Saturday final cast judges Jacob Barton and Derek Goldman. Guide was Mike Comer, and the world champion in 2016 was Lone Pine Biffy Sue, 4-year-old tree and walker female owned by Dale Montgomery and Randy Smith and handled by Rick Strausser.
Yep, that was that Clean Swamp Blaster was a dog off of Mr. Clean. That dog was winning a whole lot there, and only that was just a 25-point win for Biffy Sue that year. But yeah, Handsome Tucker was in the cast that year, and Westrick's Wipeout Zoom. Those 4 dogs, but yeah, Biffy Sue ended up winning that.
World Championship. Ben Show winner was Rockin' W's Blue Glamour Girl, 4-year-old blue tick female, owned, handled, bred by Whitney Killo. Second time she had done that.
Yep, Steve Fielder judged. He and let me see who else. Tim Hickman.
Yeah,
they judged the show that year. Yep.
Next year, 2017, in Elberton, Georgia. I remember this one fondly because I got a dog into this one. That was one I'll never forget. So.
Yeah. Hey, just because we mentioned all the opposite sex winner, there was Laurel Valley, Doc Holliday, Dave Myers. Yep. And Kelly Myers actually showed the dog. Yep.
Yep. So the 2017 Elberton, Georgia, that was actually the 40th World Championship night hunt. Obviously one that we talked about in 1987, obviously 2017 also is one that's a little bit different. And I made a note here just because every 10 years I've been talking about the magazine spread, and this is the only time that the World Championship magazine is in 2 separate issues. You got the bench shows in the November issue, and then because of an investigation at the time, the February issue was the hunt. And over the 2 issues, you had 40-page spread, so still pretty darn good, I guess.
Yeah, that's one I'll never forget, and probably the hardest one, and probably the hardest issue I've ever had to deal with or been involved with dealing with. And there's you think about that 1,000 times how you might do it differently, but I really still feel today like we put a lot of thought into in what we had. We had an issue that we didn't find out until we were there at the finals. That is just that we couldn't deal with or had the time to deal with, and turns out this dog involved ended up winning it that year, and we had to revoke it. Is what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And I think we did a thorough investigation of everything, and as it turned out at the time, I think there was some some denial of it, this and that, but I think since then too, the truth has come out and admitting that and it's all worked out the way it should have.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of one of those where you talk about hard things to deal with, and this is will probably always be the hardest thing that I've ever had to deal with.
Me too.
You want to do the right thing and what's right and fair and everything else. So it was. I don't know. Yeah, we had we pulled some dogs back in that were affected by it, and it adjusted some placements because of it. But it was a tough deal, and not just that. I really felt like the Elberton, Georgia kind of got a little bit of a black eye over it, and unjustly so.
Yeah,
those guys down there did an awesome job. And not just that, the weather, it was so hot on that weekend, and it was tough. Up until this point, we had some great hunts at Elberton, zones and other hunts that they had there that they did so well. And but yeah, it was one that'll go down as one I'll always remember. But really, yeah.
And you guys ended up having a rehunt, and the final cast judges of that rehunt, Philip Foster, who ended up becoming a field rep, was a judge there, along with Kevin Rowe, a guy I got a lot of respect for. Guide John Sejenek.
Yeah.
You can always count on him to give you a good laugh.
John.
I like John.
Yep. And he had a great place to hunt. Yep.
Yeah.
And the winner that year was a black and tan, the second one in the history, the only 2 black and tans to win it. Nelson's Northern Roxanne, 7-year-old black and tan female, owned by Patrick Stewart and Bobby Talley, and handled by Bobby Talley. 225 plus won the world championship.
Yep, and you know what? As it turned out, the result of this, redoing some of the stuff. We won't go into detail of it. Folks can go back and they can see how we did everything, I guess. But Redneck's Backwoods Shack is one that advanced to that final cast, made it in there, and everything just basically bumped up one spot is the way it turned out. So yeah.
World show champion that year, Laurel Valley Backwoods Boondocker. That was a 4-year-old tree and walker male, owned and handled by Kelly Myers.
Yep, there you go. Opposite sex winner was Danielle Champ with Backwoods Beauty Queen that year. 2018, Georgia. And, that year was so hot down there, it was 100 degrees in Indiana. So it wouldn't have really mattered where we'd had it. It would have been miserable.
The next year, 2018, going back to Mount Gilead, Ohio, third time we've been there for this year. Bench show judges Katina Childers, H.L. Meyer. I've had 2 dead casts over the entire weekend. I just thought that was notable. The final cast judges in 2018, Ronnie Fruia and Jody Jessup, who had won the world championship for guide Rick Stretch there at Mount Gilead, Ohio. And the world champion that year is one who's still really prevalent in today's hunting. Gray's Rackham Willie, 4-year-old Treeing Walker male, owned and handled by J.R. Gray, 475 plus.
Yep, and up until that hunt or after that hunt, nobody knew a J.R. Gray. And it's amazing what the world hunt like this will do, and that's a story right there about that, And look what that. A couple of things there. Here's Asa Briggs with a dog, and there's Main Street Lucy's in there again. Placed second again. Lone Pine $1 Million Baby was
3
third.
seconds for Asa?
Yeah, and then Jason Cooper is in there with Too Many Secrets. Yeah, 3 seconds for Asa.
Jeez.
It's just he's a second place king.
Jeez.
But yeah, I remember after the hunt there, I told the handler there of Willie, JR. I told him, I said, hey, I got some, if you need some breed or sire slips or litter applications. He just kind of chuckled, nobody's going to breed to my dog, and I think I left him like 3 of them or whatever. And the next week he called and said, I need about 3 more. I've got a couple more calls, but look at him today, gosh darn it.
I wish I would have pulled his pup numbers, but he's well over 1,000 now.
Oh, he's just one of the most sought after reproducers. But that's a story right there. And he even took a minus or 2 that night. It seemed like he was doing everything he could to give that hunt away, but boy, that dog pulled it off for him and put him on the map. And not just that, look at all the Willie dogs today that are winning all over.
What's that refuge they take us to hunt down there near Kilgore?
Yeah, Kilgore. That's
just a private place that nobody can hunt all year, or you can't coon hunt it all year long.
Yep. Sire to him is Thomas's Only Reason, and bottom side is Trackman bred.
A bench show winner that year, Midnight Brindled Donner. That was a 3-year-old plot male owned and handled by Connie Hogan.
Yep. Opposite sex winner was a Blue Tick Southern Flame Chantilly Lace. 2018.
Now we're getting into my era here. I remember these a little bit better. Part of these 2019 Marshalltown, Iowa.
Hey, I will say one more thing before we go further. 2018, the club did a fantastic job. One of the things they wanted to do, they had raise some money. They wanted to provide a dinner for everybody on Thursday night. So they did that first one, and from there on, that's where the dinners on Thursday night came from. And UKC's done that ever since then. That's where they started right there. Good way to start out a world hunt.
Definitely become one of the favorites. So looking at the 2019 hunt here in Marshalltown, Iowa, I know I was hired there in late May, and right before I came on, Philip Foster, you'll see his name on there. He was hired on as a field rep right before I started as well. So we shared our first world championship there together. Bench show judges that year, Liz Stalker from Ohio and Tim Hickman from Iowa there. And a notable thing about this year, a cash payout for the first time for the winners. A $10,000 payout for first place, $25,000 overall. So that brought in some hunters that I don't think were always there. And they said as much whenever you were interviewing them. I do remember that. One notable thing we've talked about, the history of the World Championship in Iowa and Tree and Coons. Scouring through the magazines, looking at the results, this is the first time I've found in the history of UKC World Championship, no dead casts over the entire 3-day weekend. Pretty darn good. Saturday's final cast, judged by Jack Bingham and Blaine Stout. The guide was Don Boucher. And the world champion that year was Spavinaw Creek in St. Emmy, 7-year-old Walker female owned by Lane Denny and Carl Reed and handled by Lane Denny, 425 plus.
Yep. Gorgeous Gomer is what she's off of, and Caney Creek JoJo is the dam. But
I do remember there in the last 10 minutes of that hunt, Half-Breed Ace treated. We got over there to score his coon, cut him loose, and about 30 yards from that, he fell treat again and had another coon. And hunt time run out, and I guarantee Lane was happy because I think he was in a pocket of them, and he had coon treating on his mind. So just some of the things you see out there, how just a mere minute or two can change the entire history of the hunt. World Bench Show winner that year was My Dog I'm Calling Dibs. That is that was a 2-year-old plot male owned and handled and bred by Mr. Wayne Steele down in Virginia.
Yep, off a world champion Midnight Brindle Donner. And the opposite sex was Red Eagle second win.
So always remember that year. Next year was the dreaded COVID year, of course, 2020. Felt like we had really good zones and world final locations in place, and then next thing in March, everybody canceled their RQE for the year. We were able to make up a lot of them, but I remember that being absolutely hectic. We had a lot of RQEs on the same weekends, so definitely skewed numbers a little bit there. But
Curtis Sparks is on as a field rep this year.
Yeah, I noticed
North Carolina.
Judges that year, Tony Ford and Lee Kearns, a couple of really good ones. And one thing I will notate here, I think this would have been, when Nicole really came into the national events team. And I feel like when you look through the magazines and you look at some of our
it'll look different, won't it?
And some of the stuff around, you think, my goodness, it really changed whenever she came on board, I think. And started doing in that capacity.
Yeah, and really, and there's nothing against the facility we had. It was a great location. The facility wasn't the best that we've had, and it was kind of dark, if I remember right. But Nicole took what she had, and she really spruced it up pretty good.
Yeah, she does an awesome job, and still to this day, her and Megan, great team, and they make our major events. They take them next level, in my opinion.
Yeah, so that was kind of the start of it for Nicole. Yep, you're right.
This was also 2020 in Peru, second year in a row where there were no dead casts over the entire event. So there I was, my second world championship, and I had never seen a dead cast at the World Hunt.
It's all you, Trevor.
Starting to wonder what was going on there. But final cast, Chad McCoy and Keith Cochran, and they had their work cut out for them. I remember Matt Bebout took us to a place with some rolling hills there in Peru. You don't think there are many hills, but we got into some hills. But it was a really, really windy night, and it was kind of hard to differentiate where dogs were and which dogs were with which. We were trying to play the wind the best we can, and it was a nail biter. It came down to the very end, but the world champion that year was Mojo's Electric Rodeo, 4-year-old tree and walker male, owned by Scott Engel and Randy Morgan and handled by Scott, 225 plus.
Off of some of Scott's breeding, Mojo Mason and Stylish Gabby on the bottom side there. But rodeo, there's since then another example, kind of like J.R. Gray's dog, kind of like Willie. He's being bred a lot today, and there's a lot of rodeo pups out there winning right now. And probably going to see him rising up in the sire standings.
That was, looking back on it, that'll be a cast that people remember of some really big name dogs. Ice Cold Down and Dirty, 225 there, second place. Chad Mann's dog. He won a lot in a lot of major events, placed in a lot of major events. He could have won this cast. He treated his dog at the end, banking on Rodeo's last tree being a plus tree. It ended up being a circle, but his dog left and took some minus, and that ended up getting him beating this cast.
Yeah, that had to be a heartbreaker for him right there.
World show champion that year, All-American Dream Girl, 7-year-old tree and walker female, owned by Megan and Dan Perez and handled by Megan.
Probably one of the oldest dogs in the show that day, and ended up winning a nice one. She won a lot of stuff, but opposite sex was Melrose Mountain Diamond in the Rough.
Due to the COVID stuff, we decided to run back our RQEs and our World Finals. We went right back to Peru, Indiana the next year to give them a fair shake. Saw a good increase in RQE entry numbers, zone entry numbers, all that good stuff. And it was a great event, and I will say it. Third year in a row and the second year in a row, Peru, no dead casts over the entire weekend. We did change the format a little bit. We talked about how, it was way back in the history of the hunt where they created the hunt alone round. And 2021 was the first year that we did away with the hunt alone round. Kind of taxing on a Thursday night to get a bunch of people out there to do the late round, the hunt alone round. And to be honest, over the past several years, it hadn't knocked very many people out.
Yeah, it didn't.
No,
it didn't. Every now and then it did, but for what it was, hey, I don't know. Yeah. It was kind of a good thing, but really, I don't know.
It's a good change.
What purpose? What good purpose did it serve? I guess I don't know. Yeah.
Also, another change that we made to the format of the hunt this year, and it'd been a while since there was any changes to the format of the hunt. It used to be that when you were talking about the semis, the highest scoring dogs from that round advanced directly to the final cast, where the other dogs went out on a late round to determine who the final member of the final cast was. This year, we actually made all the dogs in that round go out and hunt against each other to earn their way into the final cast. So no dogs had the advantage of having one less cast on them over the weekend. They all hunted the same amount of casts. And probably the most notable thing this year, the first time we did a YouTube live show of the UKC World Finals. I looked it up on YouTube just the other day. 34,000 views on that of the World Finals play-by-play.
Yeah,
Nice.
Pretty cool. I remember that final cast. It was some good dog work that night. Judges Luke Stark, Jacob Barton, Steve Emery, the guy Jason Smith. And the 2021 world champion was Bryant's Broken Pine Lumber Joe. 4-year-old Treeing Walker male owned by Ricky Bryant Jr., Michael and David Nisley, and Todd Fisher, and handled by Ricky Bryant Jr., 250 plus.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the notable thing about this, but Lumber Joe, the Indiana Outlaw dog that came in second, and the Bushwhacking Mini dog that came in third, that was Jason Cooper and Gerald Keegan. They had all been in Ricky Bryant's kennel in the past 2 years. He had been a part of training all 3 of those dogs.
All of them came out of the same kennel.
Jeez.
How does that happen?
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Ricky Bryant, something to be proud of there for sure.
Yep.
And it's out of a lot of it. You look at Lumber Joe's lineage there, see a lot of Todd Fisher and Ricky Bryant names in there.
Yep.
A lot of their breeding. Bench Show World Champion that year was County Line Tuesday's Legacy, who was just on an absolute tear in those couple of years. 4-year-old plot female owned by Christina Officer and Susan Ragsdale and handled by Christina Officer.
Yep, and the opposite sex was Whiskey River Rounder. So yeah, Todd, you're feeling a little bit like me. For here Trevor's kind of come along. He's taking over a lot of that. So I kind of
that's how it evolves.
It is. You were earlier on, and then I kind of came along, and now Trevor is. I'm still going to them. Obviously, but just kind of how it works. He's a little more involved in as far as the final cast and all this and that, and it's all good, But there's also part is kind of like
Hey, you don't get to have a beverage and do a play-by-play on the forums, though. They make you go on the live show.
Yeah. So that's changed a little bit, but yeah. So yeah, 2021. So 2022, we're back down in Dyersburg, Tennessee.
First time really in the West. Springfield, Rogersville, Murfreesboro, all in Central or East Tennessee.
Yep.
So I was excited to get in West Tennessee. Kind of a place that's primarily a PKC area. I don't think it's bad to say it on here.
Yeah.
So I was excited to get over there. Had a lot of club support. I see Jamie Eastep's on here as a first-time rep that year. Good group of reps. By this time, we're really only taking 3 or 4 reps to each event, seems like. And the bench show judges that year, Lori Galbraith and Valen Nelson. And one cool note this year I added would have been the first time that me and you during the event were working on getting the UKC Hunting Ops podcast interviews for the folks, for the loyal listeners out there.
Yeah.
That's added an interesting dynamic
kind of forgot.
to it.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah.
Doing the little 5-10 minute interviews with the winners and some judges and different things. Almost like a live look in. We actually had 2 live shows on YouTube this year. We had one on Thursday night, which we call Midnight Madness or Midnight Mayhem, whatever we call it these days, where we interviewed the round 1 cast winners as they came in, and we'll actually be doing that again this year, the 2024 World Championship. And then we had the live play-by-play on the final cast on Saturday night, which always gets a good turnout. People are excited to figure out who the world champion is. And Dyersburg that is some of the best hunting in the country. Flat hunting, lots of water, good areas, things like that. But they were in as it so happens, just the time of year, they were in a historic drought when we were down there. And it calls for more dead casts than we had originally anticipated. And I remember that Friday night was one of the more stressful nights I can remember at an event because we were looking at the possibilities of having to crown a world champion on Friday night without making it to Saturday after we've invested all these time and money and resources into this live broadcast that we plan on having Saturday night.
Yeah, we kind of had to make a decision on that night. It's one of those that we kind of thought through, and I think it ended up being well received, really did. But that was and we talked about it. It was because of that we also came up with our full elimination rules that kind of help guard against that, So and I think it's another good decision and another good move, another good change.
As it so happens, the final cast judges that year, Troy Salyers, Chad Smith, and the head judge was Brandon Scalf, who it seems to be a kind of a trend here as well that judge the final cast, and sometime down the line you may end up being a field rep. It seems to be that way, but he's one of our field reps now, guides down to those West Tennessee river bottoms, Johnny Copeland and Corey Jeffries. And you couldn't tell they were in a drought if you look at the world champion this year, and that is Get Gone Jenna, 4-year-old Treeing Walker female owned by Cheyenne Cummings and Tyler Compton, handled by Tyler Compton, who ended that cast with 600 plus. She put on an absolute clinic.
Yeah.
I remember walking my guts out that night.
Yeah.
They were split all night long. We went to Jenna, come back and score one of the other dogs. Go to Jenna, come back and score one of the other dogs. And she had her coons. That's what it takes.
And had up against some good dogs, too. It was just her night on that night, and she put on a clinic. You're right.
Yeah, Whitey's actually a semen dog out of Rat Attack that Kurt Ehring was hunting, 150 plus there. No Gamble put him to sleep. And Bushel Creek Hawk, one of a dog that always seems to be in our runnings, our finals, that Wyatt Monin hunts.
Yeah.
Bench Show world champion that year was Deep South Tailgates and Tan Lines.
Black and tan again.
6-year-old black and tan male, owned and handled and bred by Madison Fancher.
Yep, has a very famous sire that has produced a lot of winners. Lucky Old Sun was a sire there, and Deep South Sunset Celebration, one of Jackie Carpenter's females, was a dam. Opposite sex was Lisa Bedingfield again with Melrose Mountain. Lead Me Home this time.
Black and Tans kind of swept it there. And then this past year, we're here in now 2023 World Championship. We went back to Mount Gilead, Ohio. For the 4th time. This year we had, and just to kind of put it in, to quantify what it looks like now compared to back then. Right now we're looking at close to 200 qualifying events throughout the calendar year. Now they do have the option to either have a night hunt only RQE or a bench show only RQE. So we are staying around the 175-ish per year per club hosting them, but I think that's a good change to be able to allow them to focus solely on the night hunt if they don't have a bench show person in the club, or vice versa. We see some really good bench show numbers at those standalone bench show events. In 2023, we had 3,602 dogs enter into the RQE qualifiers. We had 834 dogs qualify, and we had 505 entries into our zones. On the bench show side of things, we had 1,321 dogs enter qualifiers, 718 qualified dogs, and 138 dogs entered into the finals.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a look at today's. We did add a 3rd live show to the event, and we just found out we're having a 3rd live show this year too for our bench show finals. Our 2nd and 3rd round of the bench show will be live feed, and I think we got some pretty good ideas for that. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, one of the new reps this year, Brandon Scalf. You mentioned him a little bit ago, but this was his one, the first one that he worked for us here. So, well. And here again, the other thing that now comes into play here is a full elimination format that we implemented here for the finals.
And we actually it been 104 coming to the finals for a while now, and this year we moved it up to 108 last year.
Yep.
And that for us, we wanted to protect our live show at all costs. That's the reason for full elimination format rules. And also, we come to these hunts. One of the biggest scraps we get is trying to keep dogs in pockets. Dogs are spreading out. Mm-hmm. 4 dogs are harder to keep in pocket than 3 are. So in this now you have 27 4-dog casts, and then you get down to 9 3-dog casts, 3 3-dog casts, and a 3-dog final cast in the end there. But the 2023 World Night Hunt Champion was Snooky's Cookie, a 6-year-old Treeing Walker female owned by Justin and Steve Davenport and handled by Cody Carter. 350 plus, and a pretty darn good hunt there in Kilgore Wildlife Management Area.
Yeah, I've been there before, and it was a good cast of 3 dogs. The Bush Bandit was in there, and he put on a show too. He made several trees, and another dog that's really come on the scene in the last several years, World Hunts, TOC, and some big major events, is that Preacher Man dog of Caleb's, what's his last name? Caleb Griffin, yeah, Caleb Griffin, yeah.
And this time of year, the way it is, you got to catch some breaks because some of the trees you just can't put a light in, and that was the case this year. Bush Bandit made 3 trees, 2 of them you could hardly get a light in. Preacher Man made 2 trees that you could hardly get a light in. That's just the breaks.
Yeah,
it takes a little luck as well.
The one thing I'll remember when these guys came in is just the 3 guys that were just still all jovial and cutting up and laughing and just having a good time still. For a world finals like that. Wow. Usually, I'm sure they were disappointed, 2nd and 3rd, of course they were, but boy, you sure wouldn't have noticed it when they came in. And always great. Remember that as sportsmanship couldn't have been any better than that.
World Show Champion, 2023, Gilman's Good Time Blues, 3-year-old black and tan male, owned by Dave and Kelly Myers and handled by Kelly Myers.
Yep, the opposite sex was another plot again, Midnight Brindled Gina.
So there we are. We're up to date now, and just looking at it, this year, the 2024 World Championship will be the 40th anniversary of the show, and really, when you look at the history of the World Show Championship, not much has changed in the format. It's almost just as good as it gets.
Yep.
I think it's perfectly equipped to crown the best in the show that day. 2027 will be our 50th anniversary, and it's hard to imagine, man. I really appreciate you guys coming on here with me. The World Championship started in 1978. You came in 1988, 05. Between the two of you guys, or I guess our table here, we've been to every UKC World Championship besides just 10 of them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
In almost the 50-year history of the hunt. So
Yeah.
Can't think of a better crew to talk about it. But I know we've been going at this for a while, but I figure we may look at just the overall scope of the event real quick before we close off here. And we'll start out with the World Night Hunt Champions. There's been 45 crowned in the history of the event, and the breed breakdown is 37 Tree and Walkers, 5 English, 2 Black and Tans, and a Plot. I looked at some of the trends. 9 of the first 10 were Tree and Walkers in this event. And there was actually 12 Tree and Walkers in a row from 1996 to 2007. And we talked about that little run of English. In 2008 to 2013, 3 of the 6 winners were English. But now Tree and Walkers have won the past 6 and 9 of the last 10. So those are the trends for the breed side of it. On the sex side, 28 males and 17 females. The first 10 were males. Since then, in the last 35, we've had 18 males and 17 females. And even further than that, 7 of the last 10 and 13 of the last 20 have been females. So the females are catching up. Age breakdown, there's been 13 4-year-olds, 8 3-year-olds, 7 6-year-olds, 6 7-year-olds, 4 5-year-olds, 3 2-year-olds, 3 8-year-olds, and just the 1 1-year-old in St. Jane. Average age 4.7. Does that surprise you guys at all? Or is that about what you think?
No, that's an
4 or
average
5
that
years
I would
old?
expect.
Right. Yep, I think so too.
The youngest, Bolden and Turpin's in St. Jane, 17 months old at the time of winning. And the oldest, we had 3 8-year-olds, Hillside Tree and Kate, Indian Creek Pride, and Miami River Big D. Looking at some of the owners, handlers, and breeders that are to note here. And you can't talk about World Championships without talking about Mr. World Championship itself, Russ Beller. He's a 3-time owner and 1-time handler. He was the owner in 86, 2007, and 2009, and was the handler also in 86. Jody Jessup was the handler for a world champion in 03 and the owner in 2012. Brian Whitted was the owner in 2009 and the handler in 2012. And then we talked about Duke Prue, 2-time handler, 1-time owner. He was owner handler in 93 and the handler in 97. And honestly, I looked at all the breeders here for the hunt. We have no multi-time breeders on world champions. That kind of shocked me a little bit.
I'm surprised by
Yeah,
that.
me too.
Yep. That's some good stuff right there.
Yep.
You want to talk about the bench show world champions at all, Lounge?
Yeah, sure. We had 10 black and tans over the years, 9 treeing walkers, 8 plots, 4 blue ticks, 4 English, 3 red bones, and a leopard that have won there in the show. Multiple times a breed has won 2 in a row, but never 3, not more than 2. Currently, the black and tans have won 2 in a row. Plots won the first 2 ever and 3 of the past 6. So I started with plots, and we're kind of back in the plot trend here again, I guess. Yeah. 26 males and 13 females have won the show. 5 of the last 7 and 7 of the last 10 have been won by males, and males won the first 6 of the first 7. Then after that, 4 in a row were won by females from 92 to 95. And the longest streak was 6 in a row from 2002 to 2007. 4-year-olds, 11 of those, 8 were 3-year-olds, 7 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 4 5-year-olds, 3 6-year-olds, and a 7-year-old have won. Average age for the show winners is 3.4 years old. The youngest was just 1-year-old, and that was the second one, People Smoking Joni, and then Capital City Sam's Go Annie. Simmons, Indiana, Night Falls Gotcha, Hills Sierra Red Queen, Debbie's Diogen Rebel. Those were the 1-year-olds that won. The oldest was the 7-year-old All-American Dream Girl a couple of years ago.
owners, handlers, and breeders in the bench show side of it. We talked about it. This year's first round judge at the World Championship, Kathy Shorter, handled the world champion in 91, 93, and 07. Great run for her. David Doc Birdsall was the owner on dogs in 93 and 07, and the breeder in 91, 93, and 07. Danny Peoples, owner and handler in 85 and 86, which was the first two World Championship shows. Don and Vicky Hill, both owners in 95 and 06, with Don being the handler on both. Kelly Myers just recently on a good run here, owner and handler in both 2017 and 2023. Lisa Hunziker has two under her belt, owner, handler, breeder in 2001 and 2012. Melanie Hitson and Robert Hitson had a pair in 1998 and 2002. We talked about H.L. Myers and Mike Seitz teaming up in 96 and 04. Penny Turner in 2013 and 14, along with Jody Jessup there. Whitney Killos, too, in 2010 and 2016, being the owner, handler, and breeder. And a breeder right here that is on here, Danielle Champ, a breeder for the World Champions in 2017 and 2020. And just to put a bow on it here, overview of where the World Championships have been, the 46 World Championships. Been in Indiana 15 times, Ohio 8 times, Tennessee 4 times. That kind of surprised me a little bit. 3 times in Iowa, Illinois, or 3 times, it'll be 4 times after this year. Missouri 3 times, and then 2 times in Alabama and Kentucky. The rest of the locations only been there 1 time. And leading the way for the city that's hosted the most, got any guesses?
Mount Gilead, I'm going to guess.
You're looking at the outline.
Flora?
Flora is one of the ones that have hosted it twice. Columbia City, Indiana's hosted it 3 times.
Oh, yep.
Greencastle, LaGrange, and Peru, Indiana have all led it, or all hosted it 2 times each. And then there's another location on this list that is being penciled in to host it in 2025, but you won't find about that just yet. I'll leave you hanging on that one. We have not announced that location just yet. Yeah. I think we're going to plan to do that at the World Championship this year.
Yeah.
So, man, hey, I appreciate you guys. There was a lot of information I know to go over too, but man, that's the history of our World Championship.
Nice little trip down memory lane, huh?
It is. There's a lot of it there. Yep.
Fun to think back and look back.
A lot of memories between a lot more for you guys, but even for me, even the past 5 or 6 years, and a lot of memories over the past 50 years of this World Championship.
Yeah, for sure. And, the prestige it still has today. And the one thing about the World Championship, we go to Automos, we Winter Classic and other events like this, but there's no feeling, the atmosphere that you feel when you come in on Thursday at the World Championship is like no other. Maybe the closest thing that it might compare to is the TOC, but it still has its unique atmosphere and vibe, and it's a good one. Looking forward to a bunch more.
So we'll see you guys this year, Marshall, Illinois at the World Championship. Appreciate you listening. Alan, I know we both have new Dogtra Pathfinder 2s. How are you liking yours so far?
I'm liking it. I've even had the opportunity now to use mine where I didn't have service, where I download the map of that area, and it works flawlessly. Love it.
I agree. I really like my Dogtra Pathfinder 2 as well. I've used it quite a bit the past few months. I really like the crystal clear maps. I like that it doesn't lose service very much, and I don't have many bad things to say about it at all. Dogtra Pathfinder 2, the official GPS collar partner of UKC. Thank you for listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast. Be sure to give us a follow so you don't miss any of our new episodes or content.